Your local election headquarters will begin momentarily.
Election night 2022, when the future of Florida and our country gets decided. We're live with results on WFLA Now, your local election headquarters, with interactive coverage and analysis of DeSantis versus Crist, Rubio versus Demings, and Florida's biggest races. Hello there to you folks. JB here with you live in the WFLA Now Stream Center, and I am not alone to break down all of Florida's key races tonight. Joining us in the Stream Center, we have, of course, let's go left to right. For the first time in the Stream Center, former State Senator Kelly Stargel. Kelly, it is so great to have you in here. She brings 10 plus years of experience in the Florida legislature to our stream tonight. Our Republican analyst, Kelly, it's so great to have you here. Thank you for being here.
Glad to be here.
All right. In the center, we have Libby Dean, our WFLA Tallahassee Capitol Bureau correspondent, of course, who covers Tallahassee and all things Florida politics for us. Libby, good to have you back after, of course, our Powerball stream last night.
Happy to be back. This is a little different, but I'm happy
ready
to be
go?
back. Oh, I wouldn't say rest, but I'm ready to go.
All right. And joining us for the third time in the Stream Center, Jim Davis, former gubernatorial candidate. Welcome back, Jim. It's great to have you, our Democratic analyst tonight. Can't wait to again, talk Florida politics with you and break this all down.
Good to be with you. It's going to be a long night.
It is going to be a long night. And the biggest race of all, of course, for our viewers is going to be this one right here. Governor Ron DeSantis and former Governor Charlie Crist. You're looking here at live results on your screen. The time now 7:05. No results being posted just yet. Kelly with a big smile on her face because she knows that you're just waiting for those very first precincts to report those numbers, those absentee ballots. Kelly, I'll start with you. As far as the biggest race that you are interested in tonight, is it DeSantis Crist, or is there something else that's caught your attention?
No, a little bit out of the. I mean, DeSantis Crist is obviously big, but I think that the polls are showing that that's not one that is like closely watched, at least in my opinion. You know, I'm coming out of the Senate, so honestly, closely, I'm watching the two Senate races that are competitive: the Loran Osley with Corey Simon up in Tallahassee area, and then the local one with Janet Cruz and Jay Collins. That's personally the ones I'm watching the most, just because that's kind of where my heart's been in the Florida Senate. Other than that, obviously the big races, just to see the direction of the state, Governor Marco, those guys, that'll be good.
Yeah, Tampa Bay voters, especially Janet Cruz, that one's going to be, of course, a focal point tonight in our coverage. Let's go to Jim Davis. Jim, what's the biggest race that you are monitoring tonight? Any race on the table?
Well, it starts with the governor's race. It's the top of the ticket, and when folks vote, it sets the tone. The margin in that race is going to be very important. It's going to affect a lot of close races in the legislature and local races. And it'll be interesting to see where the independent voters go tonight. They often are a factor in Florida, even if Governor DeSantis prevails. How they vote will be indicative of where the state is. I believe we're still a divided state.
As we look here at some of the biggest races that we're going to be profiling tonight and highlighting on WFLA Now. Here's another one, Florida Attorney General. We're going to be paying close attention to the CFO race between incumbent Jimmy Patronis, Adam Hattersley, the Democratic opponent in this race, and then also to the Agriculture Commissioner race between Wilton Simpson, Naomi Blemmer. We're going to be talking about all these races and the Congressional races too, especially. I'm going to highlight this one really quickly. You just saw it animate on your screen. Paulina Luna, Eric Lynn in House District 13. This is a biggie. Libby, you, of course, have been covering just about all of these races, previewing them over the last several weeks from Tallahassee. What are you watching for tonight?
So actually, the one that I was in Tampa for was DeSantis rallying for Paulina Luna, that race, District 13, Pinellas County, with Paulina Luna. And I think that it's a competitive race, but I do think that there's a lot of other ones on there that y'all have listed. But as far as Tampa Bay area, that one definitely is a key race for just kind of how the legislature is going to look. What are your thoughts on that, Kelly?
Oh, no, I agree that it's definitely going to be kind of a little bit of a bellwether. It's going to be a flip of what we've had in the past. And, you know, she's one of the probably more right candidates. So it's going to be interesting to see how that resonates with the people in an area that's been a lot of historically more Democratic. So it's going to be an interesting race to watch for sure.
I want to add to what Senator Sargent said. This race will be a bellwether for the entire country. Anna Luna has run as a full-blown Trump candidate. And if this wing of the Republican Congress grows, it's going to dramatically affect the agenda of the United States Congress on issues like, do we continue to fund Ukraine? Are we going to be able to pass a budget in Congress? So this race is going to be watched by people all over the country, and it is a very close race.
Yeah, this is a race that they're profiling right now on WFLA News Channel 8. Let's remind our audience, we're also live on your NBC station, WFLA, and all of your results are on WFLA.com, the WFLA app. You can click on the link in the description on this video. It will take you over to our website. I'll just be completely honest. As our viewers know, I'm always honest. And right now, you're going to see a lot of zeros because right now the time is 7:09. And those first few precincts haven't yet reported their numbers and gotten them back in. But you can see that all of our panelists tonight, they've got their laptops. They're keeping their eye on not just some of the local races in Tampa Bay, but as Kelly was noting, some of the other races, of course, going on across the country. But Kelly, I've got to ask you about the big race here, Governor Ron DeSantis and Charlie Crist. You, of course, have experience working with Governor DeSantis tonight. Mm-hmm. Do you view him at all as vulnerable to a former governor in Charlie Crist?
I've actually worked with both of them, so I do not think that he's going to be vulnerable. I think he's a man who says what he wants to do. He's a man, DeSantis is, and he works and gets that accomplished. I think that people have seen that. I think the agenda he put out in the state really resonated with people. I mean, it was very common sense and something that I think, I mean, obviously we're watching across the country to see, but everywhere I go, people are like, man, you're from Florida. I want to be there. I want to go. Love your governor. So Charlie was, I'm not going to say, Charlie's just been Charlie through the years, and I just think that people know where he is. And I think it's going to be hard to beat DeSantis.
I just have to ask because it's my job to ask you these questions. When of course you worked with him years ago as a Republican, now as a Democrat, what do you make of course him now on the opposite side of the aisle?
You know, this is the guy who tried to run right of Rubio in order to get elected way back then. And then now he's coming to the other side it's just, I can understand a change of heart on a couple things, maybe, seeing the light, but to do a 180 on so many issues, I think that's hard for a lot of people to grasp.
Jim, do you agree? Do you think that people see it that way, that Charlie now being a Democrat versus a Republican, somebody who flipped from one side of the issues to the other? Or do you think that people identify him as just a leader overall? As we get in as I'm speaking here I still want you to answer that question, but the very first results have come in, and this is live on your screen. So this is just going to update over the course of the night here, folks. So these are the very first results coming in, but I want you to pay attention to the top right-hand portion of your screen because it doesn't even tick as 1% in. Now, that number might change as well, but we now have about 500,000 or so votes coming in. It is way too early to read much into this, but Charlie Crist in a very, very early lead with 577,000 votes to Ron DeSantis' 507,000 votes. What do you think voters across the state of Florida make of Charlie, formerly of the Republican Party, now the Democratic Party?
If you study Charlie Crist carefully, you see that he has always been someone that tried to work with everybody. And you can characterize that as political convenience. You can characterize it as moderation. But I think his record has shown that he has brought people together to get things done in the legislature and Congress. And I think the governor's race is partly a referendum on whether we're looking for a uniter, or I would call the governor a divider. Some people would call him a fighter. But the other aspect of this race is that Ron DeSantis, Governor DeSantis, has spent $100 million in this race. And the county where that's going to show up is in Dade County. The early numbers in Dade are not good. And you got to hand it to the Republican Party. They've invested heavily for years, both in the political agenda and in money and manpower in Dade County. And that is going to be one of the Achilles heels for Charlie Crist. He has got to be competitive in Dade County. There's a lot of votes down there, and he really needs to have a strong showing down there, a respectable showing.
So Florida, does it go through the I-4 corridor tonight, or does it go through another region of the state to that? That's a good sort of segue for us to talk about. the key sort of sections of the state that we're paying attention to most? Is it the I-4 corridor, as we talk about it so much on every election night?
Well, let me just say, and the senator represents the I-4 corridor, and I did at one time. When things are normal, and things are not normal right now, and South Florida performs significantly for Democrats and North Florida performs significantly for Republicans, the I-4 is the swing. This may not be a normal night. I think one of the problems may be the Democratic turnout tonight. That $100 million that Governor DeSantis spent, and let's face it, almost every Republican official in the state is in lockstep with the governor. This has been a very organized effort. If that pays off all over the state, the I-4 will not be as important as usual. Again, I think the independent voters are the group to watch.
We were talking with Tara Newsom, who we're going to be bringing in. She's standing by, of course, our political expert from St. Petersburg College tonight, and we were talking about the discrepancy in money. It's always good to be the guy with $200 million versus the guy with $31 million in the war chest, Kelly. So obviously a massive advantage to DeSantis tonight, and of course, yes, as Jim is noting, this is the party of DeSantis right now here in the state of Florida.
I would agree. I think that he's done, like I said, he's led our state through a pandemic in a remarkable way, and I think people saw that. And I think it's not all about money. I think Val's been outspending Rubio, so I think that
that's a good point.
It's not always the money that's gonna do it. I think people are a little bit more independent of that. And talking about the I-4 corridor, I think what you're going to be looking at least I think a lot is going to be more the Miami area, kind of what's going on with some of the Hispanic voters. That's kind of a little bit of a change in the past. The Hispanic voters always been leaned more Democratic. We're finding now with some of the polling that they're actually kind of going more Republican. And that's interesting considering the backlash they're trying to paint. And I think that points to the borders, that open border. People who are here legally get very frustrated by the people who are coming across the borders illegally. And many of those are a lot of your voters down in South Florida who have come through legal means and are voting. And they are very frustrated with what's happening with our borders.
Libby, I'm going to bring you in here in just 1 second. I want to show our viewer, we're monitoring folks here in the WFLA Now Stream Center. We are monitoring live feeds across the state of Florida. This is the most interactive coverage that we have, of course, in the state of Florida. So we're going to be taking you to a variety of different locations. And let's start here with the headquarters for Val Demings, of course, in Central Florida. And look, it's early in the night. People are still filing in, showing up to their respective campaign headquarters or watch parties across the state. But this is live in Central Florida from Val Demings' camp. We can also go live closer here in the Tampa Bay area. I want to spotlight this race. This is the watch party for Laurel Lee, as I understand it, and this is now going over to District 15, another significant race that we are watching tonight, Libby. We're talking about, of course, Laurel Lee, the Republican, going up against Alan Cohen, former investigative journalist, the Democrat. Alan Cohen has been... he's been in races before. He's been trying to, of course, establish himself in Florida politics. And this is a race that a lot of people are going to be paying close attention to tonight in the Tampa Bay area.
There's a lot of background there, JB, so I'm glad you bring it up. I think we have Laurel Lee, who was Secretary of State, resigned to run for this district that was redistricted and now is a district. And then we have Alan Cohen, former investigative reporter, who is running against Laurel Lee. And I've spoken with both candidates quite a lot, actually, mostly via Zoom, but I have spoken with them, and I think there's a big difference here. And one thing that Cohen has really pushed is abortion access, and I think that is one issue that he is focused on, while Laurel Lee has shied away from that. But I think that's typical of any Democrat versus Republican kind of matchup we have here in Florida. What are your thoughts when it comes to this race compared to, I mean, you've seen these kind of matchups before. You've seen these different power dynamics here. What do you think? Well,
and I watched that. Obviously, I was a part of that race earlier in the primary. And at the time, it was going to seem very competitive, very close. And then, as you saw the two candidates come out of the primary, you've just kind of seen this separation that's not even on the radar. I think as much of it's semi-competitive, but it's kind of a not on your hot list of Anna Paulina and some of those others. So I think Laurel's going to do a very good job. I think that it's not going to be as close as people think. And also, Alan Cohen has run before. So
I'm going to have to hop in here. We're going to Allison Henning. We'll be back here live in a second.
Now, you can hear the crowd here cheering behind behind me. I'll take the camera off me for a second and take a look at this crowd. There are hundreds of people here
I just
at
went
the Tampa Convention Center tonight.
Well,
the DeSantis campaign, they are calling tonight.
in my notes. I had
You're still getting paid.
Election
You're
night
still
celebration. We have seen
still
folks
getting paid.
trickling in for a couple of hours now, and of course, they are watching. They're keeping a close eye on the screen here as those results come in. Every few minutes, we are hearing those cheers. But going into tonight, we know Governor DeSantis, he was confident, saying at multiple rallies leading up to today that we have more registered Republicans than Democrats in the state of Florida right now. But he did say over and over again, we do need the Republican Party does need to show out at the polls. So of course, we're keeping a close eye on the results here, and we'll keep you updated on how the mood is, and of course, once Governor DeSantis does take the stage here. Reporting live in Tampa, back to you guys.
All right, Allison Henning reporting for us tonight. Thank you.
It's going to be kind of loud there tonight, don't you think? Already is. We're closely monitoring election results as more numbers continue to come in. However,
all eyes are on the tropics as well, because it's November and we thought we were past this, but we're not. Tropical storm Nicole inches closer to Florida. Chief Meteorologist Jeff Baradelli is tracking every second of it.
Yeah, we think it's going to be strengthening a little bit more tonight. Pressure has started to drop. Usually the winds follow that. So by tomorrow, we could have a hurricane on our hands making landfall on the east coast of Florida. Does it take the northerly or southerly track? Looking more like probably the southerly track closer to the Bay Area. If it takes that northerly track, gusts only to 45 miles an hour, 1-2 inches of rain or so. Takes that southerly track, now we're talking gusts to 60 miles an hour, maybe slightly more in some places, and a few inches of rain, which could cause some localized flooding. Peak wind gusts along the east coast up to 85 miles an hour. Places like Polk County and into parts of the Nature Coast, maybe 65 miles an hour. That means scattered power outages. About 55 mile an hour winds maybe at max in Tampa, and then south of that in places like Bradenton and Sarasota, maybe 40, 45 at the most. On the East Coast, could be as much as 6 to 8 inches of rainfall. Here on the West Coast, we're looking at more like 2 to 4 inches. And again, there could be some pockets of flooding. One thing I want to call your attention to, as the storm begins to move away on Thursday night and Friday morning at times of high tide, that'd be 5 p.m. and 5 a.m., we could see storm surge because we're going to have that onshore flow, 2 to 4 feet. That is not insignificant. That is a significant amount of storm surge possible on the Nature Coast. But here's the good news. As we head into the weekend, lots of sunshine returns and much cooler air follows on Sunday. That's your weather forecast.
all right, thank you, Jeff. And your local election headquarters is not just on television here on Channel 8.
No, WFLA Now is covering the latest developments all evening long with special guests to add some perspective to this evening's results. JB Buno is live for us right now with his guests in the WFLA Stream Center.
Yeah, we're here live with our analysts, including State Senator Kelly Stargel. We've got former gubernatorial candidate Jim Davis joining us here in the Stream Center, and Tallahassee Bureau correspondent Libby Dean. We're live right now across all platforms on WFLA Now, interacting live with our audience as the live results begin to come in. Jim, I want to start with you. What is the key race that you are watching most intently tonight?
Watching the governor's race. It sets the tone. It's the top of the ballot, particularly watching how independent voters vote in that race.
And do you think that that's going to make a big difference in the race tonight?
I'm not sure. It depends on the Democratic turnout, which is a little troubling right now, but it's too early to say.
What is the race that you are watching most closely?
Obviously watching the big ones, but then some of the ones that are close to my heart were the ones where you've got senators. So I'm watching what's going on with Janet Cruz and Jay Collins and Loran Osley and Corey Simon, and then also keeping a beat on what's happening with the Ag Commissioner race with our former Senate President Wilton Simpson. So those are the ones I'm watching.
And what do you think the outcome of those is going to look like when it comes to the bigger grand scheme of the legislature here?
Well, you know, obviously we're going to come back, makes the determination when we come back with the Senate majority, supermajority, you know, what that's going to look like. I think it's going to really set a tone for what the governor may be able to get accomplished in these next couple of years. So at the state level, which is where my heart's kind of always been, those are going to be huge issues, huge races to watch to see the tone of the state of Florida going forward.
And we're live right now on WFLA.com with Kelly, Jim, Libby, myself, breaking down the results as they come in. And we are getting election results right now, so you can scan the QR code on the right side of your screen. It will take you to WFLA.com, the WFLA app. We will, of course, be your local election headquarters all night long. So we'll leave this QR code up on your screen here for just a moment longer. Jim, I want to ask you just one more time here while we have the opportunity to do so. We have a few more seconds. This race is considered to be a major uphill battle for Charlie Crist tonight. How uphill is it in your estimation?
Governor DeSantis has spent $100 million. The Republican Party is in lockstep with him. He's nationalized the race at a time where it's tough for the party in power to have control. So there's a lot against Charlie Crist, and particularly Hurricane Ian elevated the governors. It often does. It's elevated Jeb Bush and past governors because he was our leader, and we all looked to him, whether we were Democrats, Republicans, or independents. So it's an uphill battle, but he's run a hard right agenda with the state. He's running for president. Let's see how the independent voters react to that.
Jim Davis, Kelly Stargell, Libby Dean, myself, we're live right now across all platforms. Scan the QR code, join the live stream, join the conversation as live results come in on WFLA.com. We'll send it back to you.
All right, JB, thank you very much.
And you can tune into JB's stream on WFLA.com and the WFLA app. And we're going to be right back.
All right, and we're here back live on WFLA.com, the WFLA app. Let's bring back in our live audience and again, introduce you again to our panelists joining us on stream. State Senator Kelly Stargell. We've got Jim Davis, former gubernatorial candidate. Of course, knows quite a thing about running for governor. Libby Dean, our Tallahassee Bureau correspondent. Let's get back to the live results as they are coming in. And we do have results coming in the governor race, the one that, of course, people are paying super close attention to. So let's go to it. These are live results from WFLA.com. Ron DeSantis now in the lead again, very early, 3% of precincts reporting 1.7 million votes for Governor DeSantis. Libby, we've got 1.5 million for Charlie Crist. Paying attention now, the numbers really starting to pick up on WFLA.com.
It's interesting because we saw that flip, obviously, but now we're seeing 3% in that top corner, so that is making that difference. I know this. You had mentioned that this is the race that you're watching most closely, as pretty much every Floridian is as well. I think the second one that people are watching most closely would be Rubio versus Demings. As we've talked about, though, that uphill battle. Kelly, I do want to ask you, you know, what are your thoughts here as someone who used to work with both of these people? You know, what does this mean? What comes next, you know?
I'm sorry, I thought you said Demings Rubio. You're talking.
I'm actually back on Crist
okay.
and DeSantis.
I was like,
the one that
I didn't serve with Demings.
I know, I went back and forth too much. But yeah, when it comes to this race, and I mean, you being a former senator, what are your thoughts?
No, I think that DeSantis's the agenda he put forward and that we've got accomplished these last couple of years, people resonated. They resonated with people. They appreciate, not only in the state of Florida, you've seen that agenda kind of go nationwide. People are talking about what he's done. So he's very well liked in the state, and I think Crist, people in Florida have known Crist through the years, and I think that may be shown today in the results. I really don't think it's going to be as close as people think it may be.
So with that being said, what do you think, and this could be a question for both of you, what do you think each candidate could have done better? What do you think messages peaked too early? Let's go to you first. What do you think?
Well, one of the disadvantages Charlie Crist has is the incumbency for the Governor DeSantis. I mean, you got to fire somebody for cause, and he had to state cause, and he did not have the money to make his case. There's a lot of people that have moved to Florida since Charlie Crist was the governor. A lot of people don't pay attention to the last minute. And the general political climate is not kind to the party in power in Washington, Democrats. So if Charlie Crist had more money to spend, if there had been more debates, I think the race would be more competitive than it is right now.
I think what Charlie's having to overcome is his record. I mean, how are you the person who tried to run to the right of Rubio not very long ago in a rather recent memory, and now turning around and running as far left as he's running, and following the entire Biden agenda and everything Biden agrees with? It's just, I think the people of Florida don't trust that as much, and so I think to your point earlier, Jim, the independents are going to be kind of close to watch, but it's going to be interesting to see how they react to that, because you got a lot of new people to Florida, so that may change some of it as well. But that's what I think. That's probably the biggest thing on Charlie is his record.
Yeah, we're kind of seeing that red shift here in Florida, especially with all those new people moving in. I mean, you were just talking about turnout, and we had briefly mentioned it. What's the update there? I know you're scrolling. You're really looking. We all are. We all have our laptops here, eyes glued to them, as well as giving our viewers, the best analysis we can here. So.
Well, I think the first thing to point out is the Republican turnout will be strong. Governor DeSantis, again, it's been $100 million, has worked this very hard. He's involved in school board races. He's involved in many of the legislative races, handpicked candidates. So this is a machine that's in operation. Democrats in a different boat. We don't have a statewide elected Democrat now, but we are still a purple state. We are bruised and battered. And the question tonight is, what kind of leader is Florida looking for? This governor has basically governed in support of his base, which is pretty historical. Even Jeb Bush, who was a good conservative Republican, reached out to Democrats and independents. This governor, not so much. So I think This race is very important in terms of what the direction of Florida is. I think the Rubio-Demings race is also very important. As Senator Stargell pointed out, that there is more evenness in terms of the amount of money they have to spend. And I think a lot of people got to know Val Demings, and we'll see how she holds up to. It's another bellwether for the state.
I'm going to come in here really quickly and remind our audience we're paying attention to a lot of races right now. We're also standing by for a live report from our D.C. Bureau correspondent, Hannah Brandt, who's going to be joining us here in just a moment as we bring in now more results. 6% of precincts reporting in the U.S. Senate race between Senator Marco Rubio and, of course, Congresswoman Val Demings. 1.7 million for Demings, 1.9 million for Rubio. Extremely early, but as these numbers come in, we'll start to see a little bit of a storyline start to take shape. Let's bring in Hannah Brandt joining us from our D.C. Bureau. Hannah, it's great to have you on the live stream. You're paying close attention to, I'm sure, Senator Marco Rubio and Val Demings. What are you watching for in this race, and what is the key storyline as we start to see these results take shape?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Marco Rubio is certainly going into it with an advantage. I mean, he's the incumbent here. He's already served 2 terms as senator. But of course, Congresswoman Val Demings is not unknown to the state of Florida. And I think this race is closer than many had thought in the beginning. What Rubio also has an advantage on is, of course, the national trends are favoring Republicans right now. And that's why a lot of people are predicting that Senator Rubio is going to come away tonight with that win.
Thank you, Hannah. We're going to come back to you here in just a moment. Let's go live now to Kathy Castor in the District 14 race, speaking live on WFLA Now.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Tampa Bay's Congresswoman Kathy Castor. I'm here with my husband, Bill, and my daughter, Chrissy. And I just want to say to my neighbors all across the Tampa Bay area, thank you for your confidence in me. Things look very good. We've never taken anything for granted in this community and are here and committed to helping our neighbors to lower costs. I know there is an economic squeeze on right now, and I'm going to do everything in my power in the Congress to put money back into your pockets, to lower the cost of prescription drugs, to lower the cost of health care, the cost of energy, to stand up to the special interests in Washington, D.C. that have entirely too much power. We have worked together for many years, and I am committed to public service. It is a tradition in my family. I love this community where I grew up, where I raised my daughters, where I got married, and I practiced law. And I just am entirely grateful at this point in the evening that things look good. And again, you never take anything for granted in this business, but I love my hometown.
What about going back?
All right, that's Kathy Castor speaking live, and you can watch that in its entirety on WFLA.com. Let's go back now to Hannah Brandt. Hannah, I'd like to continue talking to you about the balance of power in the Senate. So much at stake tonight. I think that there's a lot of eyes, of course, on Georgia with Walker versus Warnock. Of course, eyes also on Rubio versus Demings, some key races, but a lot hangs in the balance tonight across the country with these several different key races in the U.S. Senate.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing is a lot hangs in the balance because it's so close. The margin in the Senate is, of course, 50-50 with Vice President Harris, obviously a Democrat, casting that tie-breaking vote for Democrats. But the takeaway here is Republicans only need a net gain of 1 Senate seat, and that could certainly happen tonight. The thing you mentioned with states like Georgia, another close state, Pennsylvania, is we might actually not know the balance of power in the Senate tonight because states like those states tend to take a few extra days to certify the results of their elections. So we may not know the official balance of power of the Senate, but certainly a ton at stake here.
Again, Hannah Brandt, our D.C. Bureau correspondent. Hannah, before we get you out, I'd like to ask you just about Washington, D.C., of course, known as the center of the political universe, where you're joining us from. But some have called Florida the center of the political universe of late. Of course, we have a decision by former President Donald Trump that is going to be coming in, of course, next week. We also have Governor Ron DeSantis, who has not made his intentions clear, but as we have noted earlier in the stream and earlier in our coverage, he has a massive war chest of campaign funds. So what do you make of Florida right now with Trump, DeSantis, and a whole lot of moving pieces going on the chessboard?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, eyes are on Florida, and Florida is certainly important. Florida has long been this purple swing state, and in some senses, you can see national trends running right through Florida. And I think, you said it, Governor DeSantis has been not only a governor that Florida is watching, but a governor that the nation is watching. He's made a lot of headlines. Obviously, former President Trump makes a lot of headlines, and it could be the two of them going head to head in the 2024 election for that Republican nomination. It's too soon to tell about that, and a lot of people are just focused tonight on the House and the Senate races. But Florida is certainly one to watch when it comes to that 2024 race as well.
Hannah Brandt joining us from our D.C. Bureau. Hannah, we know you got a lot to work on tonight. Best of luck to you on election night, and I'm sure we'll be talking to you again in the future. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for talking to me.
All righty, back here with you live. Let's start to go now race by race again with our analysts here on WFLA Now. We've got Kelly Stargell, Jim Davis, Libby Dean, myself here breaking down the races as we now have 12% of precincts reporting in the race for Tallahassee for the Florida governor seat. We have Ron DeSantis at 2.2 million and 54% of the vote, 1.8 million for Charlie Crist. Let's go through all of them one by one. Next up, with 11% of precincts reporting, 2.1 million votes in for Marco Rubio, 1.8 million, or nearly 1.9 for Val Demings. We'll be paying very close attention to the race that, of course, Hannah was just discussing here a moment ago. Let's go to the Attorney General race with results starting to come in very early, 1% of precincts reporting. Ashley Moody with a lead over Armis Ayala. We've got the CFO race. Also, Jimmy Patronis, the incumbent, 798,000 votes to Adam Hattersley, the a challenger, 703,000 votes coming in for him. And the last statewide race we're focusing on is the agriculture commissioner, the former seat of a gubernatorial hopeful and Nikki Fried. Wilton Simpson has a slight edge, early, 1% of precincts reporting over Naomi Blemmer. Now let's go to the congressional races. We're going to go through all of these, and then Kelly, Jim, I'm going to ask you what stands out to you. 24% of precincts reporting with Darren Soto and Scotty Moore, and this is closer than I think we were expecting in this race. We might come back to this and talk about this a little bit more. Again, 76% of the vote outstanding, but Darren Soto getting 55% to Scotty Moore's 44%. We'll see where this race goes from here. Very interesting. Let's go to District 11. Daniel Webster, 114,000 votes. He's got nearly 2/3 of the vote there. To Shante Munns coming in, 41% of precincts reporting there. So that's the most that we have seen in any of these races. Moving on to District 12. Gus Bilirakis, once again, facing off against Kimberly Walker. These two know each other from facing off several times. Bilirakis expected to retain his seat, but 155,000 votes for Gus, 75,000 votes for Kimberly, almost half of precincts reporting there. District 13. We're now getting into the race that a lot of folks are hyper-focused on across the state of Florida. Eric Lynn, Paulina Luna are virtually tied with 10% of precincts reporting. We just heard a moment ago from Kathy Castor. Didn't appear too nervous, but of course James Judge has been heavily campaigning here in Tampa. He has about 40% of the vote, but I don't know if that is accurate in the top right. I believe that we are going to get the accurate number of precincts reporting, but it's still extremely early in this race as well. In District 15, Laurel Lee, with 8% of precincts reporting, holding a little bit of a lead over former investigative journalist Alan Cohen, 65,000 votes for the Democrat. We'll pay attention to all of these races. And then going over to Vern Buchanan against Jan Snyder, 13% of precincts reporting, 126,000 votes standing in there for Vern Buchanan. Moving over now to District 17. This is expected to go to the candidate on the left side of your screen. This is Greg Stubbe, 123,000 votes for him. Andrea Kale, 90,000 votes. Again, very early in this race as well. And lastly, District 18. Scott Franklin, widely expected to retain his seat, 69,000 votes to Keith Hayden, coming in at about 30,000 votes, 5% of precincts reporting. As we welcome you back into the WFLA Now Stream Center, as we break down all of your results, we are now going to start paying attention to your comments. You can use hashtag HeyJB, but You can also use hashtag WFLA Now. We're going to be paying attention to the YouTube live comments, Facebook live comments as well. As I bring it back over to Libby and Kelly and Jim, let's just go through these, as I'm sure you were taking mental notes, perhaps handwritten ones. What was a race that stood out to you as we start to go through these? It's very early, but what was a race that started to pique up your interest a little bit?
Well, clearly it's the Luna Lynn race. I mean, this is a nail biter. President Trump endorsed Paulina Luna. Eric Lynn really came out of nowhere, although he has a very impressive record. He has pulled a lot of crossover voters. Again, I think this will be a test of where the independent voters are tonight. And this race is a local race. It's not just a national race. So I think this is a bellwether for our Tampa Bay area, and I think it's a bellwether for the country.
Kelly.
Yeah, I have to agree. That's going to be the race to watch for sure, and seeing kind of what that does. Because if she ends up winning that and at the end winning it with some margin, that speaks volumes to what may happen as we watch the rest of the night go on.
Libby,
Yeah.
A lot of races we're paying close attention to tonight.
Yeah, there are a lot of races, and I'm going to go with you on this, the Lynn Luna race. As we had spoken about earlier on the stream, how that one has caught a lot of national attention. And I think there's a lot of these races, we're very early in. We're only seeing 10% in here, which, I mean, what are y'all's thoughts? We're 10% in. You were talking about turnout, Democratic turnout. What are your thoughts here? I know it's very early on, but.
Well, he's overperforming the Democratic vote. And so clearly he's getting some crossover. Again, I'd say independents are important, maybe some Republican votes. And he also has run a grassroots campaign. And I think that's one of the challenges for Democrats tonight. A lot of our candidates have not been able to run the grassroots campaign they wanted to. Eric Lynn did. So President Trump endorsed Anna Luna. I don't think he endorsed many congressional candidates. This is partly a referendum on Donald Trump.
I was going to ask you that next. How big of a role do you think the endorsement from Trump is going to play in the turnout here?
I don't know that it's going to affect the turnout, and I think when you're talking about that first 10% with him as the lead, those first ballots are usually your mail-in ballots, and right now the Democrats are performing better. They've had better turnout than mail-in ballots, more requested, more responded. So I think those numbers are going to change as we go through the night, quite frankly, and more tip to her side as we go because of what has happened with the turnout in Pinellas County overall has been more Republican in the past. As far as the Trump endorsement, I think it probably did help to drive out the energy at the end here and to drive out that vote for sure. I think there was a push by Trump himself more towards the end, and I think that woke people up and said, okay, that's right, it's right here, it's right now, because his historical supporter has always been kind of the not politically engaged voter, historically. So that person hopefully turned out to vote, and that's a Republican vote.
Right. I think on Sunday night we had Trump in his rally, and he had all of those candidates, that long list of candidates that were on there, not including Governor DeSantis, but that long list, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how much that affects these races going forward, because how important is that endorsement, and what does that mean for the Republican base? I mean, what are your first takes on that?
No, I
know these wouldn't be your first takes.
No, I think
what
his
is your
endorsement,
take on that?
His endorsement is important. Like I said, the people who he appealed to were just people who were regular working at, doing their jobs and not following day and night politics like, you do or I do in this world. And that person, their vote matters and what they think matters. And I think he tapped into that. That was kind of his niche in all of politics. And he said, hey, guess what? This is that time. Got to go vote. And I think it's going to help the turnout on Election Day tremendously.
I'd like to ask a question to you, Kelly. I'm curious. For conservatives across the state, for conservatives across the country, what endorsement carries more value, more meaning, and actually will help you win your race more if it's between Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis right now? They're very different endorsements, and they speak to voters in different ways. But which one to you carries more weight as far as the Trump versus DeSantis endorsement, in your opinion?
I don't think it's an either or. If you look at these candidates, the majority of them got both because they're very like-minded individuals. The policies that they put forward were very similar. Their approaches may have been different, and I think you've seen a lot of that when the approach that DeSantis and how he operates and leads is very different from how Trump operates and leads. But the core value of trying to get back to common sense, grassroots, good old working, middle-class families, both of them speak to that individual who just want government to leave them alone and let me live my life. And I think that that was kind of what was some of their agendas, and I think that's what resonated with the people.
Jim?
So a little bit different view. I think Ron DeSantis introduced himself to the country when he used immigrants fleeing Venezuelan political persecution.
Talking about Martha's Vineyard.
For as pawns. And he's kind of said he'll do it again. He's already spent a lot of taxpayer dollars paying a private company to send folks to Delaware because that's where the president's from. But he hasn't done yet, but we paid for that. That's the kind of political theater that normal people don't like. It doesn't improve our lives here. It doesn't lower gas prices. It doesn't help with homeowners insurance. It doesn't help with the quality of education for our kids. But Ron DeSantis is unforgiving with that agenda. That is a Trump agenda. We'll see how that plays tonight with independents, and we'll see how that plays around the country, because tomorrow Ron DeSantis starts his campaign for president of the United States.
I have some comments coming in, but Kelly, I've got to give you the opportunity to respond.
Well, this isn't a debate. I almost feel like it is, but it's not. Man, put me on a plane and send me to Martha's Vineyard. That would be awesome. So it's not like it was a pawn. It was trying to make a point that, people who aren't dealing with this illegal immigration situation are the ones who speak the loudest on how it should be dealt with. And I think what he was trying to say is, if you're so outspoken on this subject, then you can deal with it. This is what it's like. And we saw how they dealt with it. They gave them some food and they treated them nicely and they sent them out of town.
I do want to ask you one question. You serve on the budget committee, and we saw DeSantis took from that $12 million pot that was in the original spending that he was allocated. So what are your, did he do that correctly? I think that's a big question. And from a legislative side, not from the perspective of right or wrong, did he do that right or wrong? It's on paper,
Well, and that I can't speak to that because I don't know the detail of how exactly it was done. And right when all that happened, and I think I said that in the budget committee, we went straight into dealing with hurricanes and how we fund all that, and that kind of got put to the side. And it will be looked at to see specifically, how he did it. I think that he probably did do it correctly because he's a pretty smart guy and he has a good team of attorneys around him to make sure he does things right. What we were doing with those funds is basically saying, don't make it somebody else's problem. Don't take the people from the border and ship them to other places. Let's handle the situation on the border. And I think that's the message that's lost. We've got, 20 million people, or however, the numbers, they're so staggering. I don't even remember what they are from day to day, of people coming across the border into the state with fentanyl, amounts of fentanyl that could probably wipe out entire communities and drugs.
I don't mean to interrupt. We have to go live now. It's Anna Paulina Luna speaking live.
She'll speak the same thing.
50,000 doors, but they cut my mic. It's the NSA. Just kidding. But again, I'm very honored not only to have your support, but to be hopefully representing all of you for Pinellas County. So, this seat is going to be rightfully handed back into the hands of all of you. I do prefer the term representative because, again, I'm not going up there for my own self-interest. I'm not going up there for DC. I'm going up there for all of you. And so I can tell you that I will not let you down. Again, we'll be waiting for them to officially call the race, but we are very excited, very honored, slightly nervous. I'm going to be totally honest with you. This is a huge, huge lift. But I promise you guys, I'm very honored right now, and thank you so much for all of your support.
Anna Paulina Luna speaking live, addressing her supporters, of course, right here in the Tampa Bay area. You heard there, waiting for, of course, some clarity on the results that are still coming in this race. Eric Lynn holding a lead over Anna Paulina Luna, but again, 90% of precincts still to be heard from. I want to bring in our commenters. I have been paying attention to the Facebook Live, YouTube Live comments, wherever you're joining us from. Welcome from the WFLA Now Stream Center alongside Jim Davis, Kelly Stargell, Libby Dean. I'm JB Buno. Let's get to some of the comments that have been coming in, and you guys can both provide context on this, Kelly and Jim. Corbin wants to know, #KJB, how long does it usually take to get final election results? This is a big question, but of course, we expect it over the next several hours. And Then this brings us, of course, to projections. And I would love to hear, of course, you guys about projections. And of course, we here at WFLA get them from 3 sources. We will be following the Associated Press for their projections, NBC News, and then as well News Nation via Decision Desk HQ. If any one of those 3 calls a race, we are going to be, of course, calling it here as well on stream and attribute properly. But you, of course, both of you, Kelly and Jim, you have been at these watch parties. You know what it is like. Can you just give us a little bit of an idea, just what it's like in the room right now for these candidates? Are they shaking on the inside and just trying to smile on the outside? Kelly, you're nodding. Is that how it goes?
You're always shaking on the inside. I don't care if you're running against a write-in candidate. You're still shaking until it's done. It's over when it's over. Florida, fortunately, we're in Florida, so you get to hear the results pretty close. It always says unofficial, but very seldom do those change too much. It's only if the votes are really, really close that you will go into recounts, and frequently it's not even that close most of the time. So you're going to probably know tonight what's going on in Florida. Rest of the country, that's a whole other ballgame.
Yeah, the viewer who asked how long that takes, I mean, if we're just focusing on Florida, it's going to take obviously a short amount of time, but we have these big races very near to us that may take more days. I don't know how many, to say days might be extensive.
We're not talking days. We're talking, we need results tonight, Libby.
I know, this is like the Powerball last night.
Okay, yes, the Powerball took us for a loop.
Yeah, so Jim, your thoughts on that as someone?
Well, first of all, it's not responsible to call anything until voting finishes in the Panhandle, and it doesn't finish for another 15 minutes. That's the first thing. The second is, there are so many issues and pressure in these election offices right now, whether it's Lori Edwards in Pasco in Polk County or Craig Latimer in Hillsborough. They want to get it right. They're more concerned with getting it right than getting it early. That's their job. So I think they're going to be careful.
More this year than ever.
More than ever. They're going to be careful about counting ballots. And in some states, hopefully not Florida, you've already got problems. There are already lawsuits pending in Pennsylvania. And so in Florida, once the polls close, people are going to start projecting based on turnout, particularly in the statewide races. But in the races that are still close, you're going to have to wait on the supervisors to count the votes, and it could take a while. I think the Luna-Lynn race is a good example. It's going to be a long night in that one, and perhaps some of these state Senate races as well.
Yeah, and then, of course, it comes down to, and the common question that we wish that we didn't have to ask this question, but candidates have been asked, will you accept the results of the election when, of course, they are finalized by, the powers that be in their respective states? This is a question that's being asked across the country right now. And of course, so it's the big elephant in the room as far as accepting the results of the election. Do you think that anybody in Florida, do you think that that is going to be a problem for our state tonight with people who might be on the losing end not accepting the results of the election?
Well, Anna Luna, I don't think she has acknowledged that President Biden was elected, although most people have. So if that race is close, I think you could see a similar issue. But I would generally hope these elections, first of all, they're not that close. And secondly, I think one of the things that the senator and I agree on, it's very important that we respect and try to uphold the integrity of the system. And that's what binds us together as Americans, as Floridians, that we believe in a fair fight and winner wins and loser loses. So I don't think you're going to see that tonight. But I think in other parts of the country, like Pennsylvania, where they're fighting over the rules, it's going to be a problem, and it's going to go on for a few days.
Kelly, we hope that this isn't a problem tonight.
No, we're a country of wanting instant gratification. And as I said, these are unofficial results. We will all look at the end of the night and go, oh, it's done. It's finished. We've been called. Still an unofficial result. So we have a lot of checks and balances that go into place before those become official. But once those results are official, they get certified and signed. That's weeks from now. At that point, I think everything's been worked out. Whatever situations of conflict are usually done, at least in our state, we should be. I mean, you saw what happened way back when. We drug it out for a long, long time before it was official, counting chads, hanging chads, and all of that. But once it became official, we had a confidence that that vote was the right vote.
And we hope, of course, that I really liked what you said, Jim. It's about getting it right. I think that there is this, we live in a world of immediate satisfaction, right, where everybody wants things now. That blockbuster movie that came out in theaters, that you don't have to wait 6 months for it to come, home on Netflix. You put it on like 3 weeks after it's out of theaters. So people are used to immediate satisfaction these days. And with election results, it is so much better to be right than be first. So hopefully we have all of the results being reported accurately tonight. And just a big shout out to all of the hardworking men and women across the state that are busting their you-know-whats tonight to make these election results come through to all of the respective media outlets across our state. We, of course, as journalists, I know we express confidence in the system. We hope, of course, that we have results tonight that the unofficial results align with the official results. As we look here live at your screen, we have officially passed the 33% threshold. We're now at 35% of precincts reporting in the race for Florida governor. Governor Ron DeSantis at 3 million votes. Charlie Crist at 2.3 million votes, a separation of about roughly 12 to 13 percentage points. I want to take you also live for the very first time. We're going to take you live to the camp of Governor Ron DeSantis. And as you would expect, it's a lot of people. Governor Ron DeSantis, of course, as we see, a cameo from WFLA photojournalist Jim Hockett, who is working this. This is at the Tampa Convention Center tonight. No surprise, of course, to anybody in this room that there is a packed house. And, of course, Governor Ron DeSantis. Interesting that he is here in Tampa tonight. No surprise that Charlie Crist, of course, is in Tampa Bay. But Jim, did you find it a little bit surprising that DeSantis is here tonight?
No, let's talk about the Tampa Bay for a minute. Senator Rubio has spent an extraordinary amount of time here. And Governor DeSantis spent a lot of time here. This is still a very important media market. It's a community full of voters who size up the candidates. Again, a lot of independent-minded voters. And I think the fact that both of these candidates have spent a lot of time here demonstrates that we are important. We may be important to who wins. We may be important to the margin of victory. This is still a critical part of the state.
As we look here, this is now starting to accelerate very quickly, folks. 42% of precincts now reporting, as we have Governor DeSantis coming in at 56% of the vote, Charlie Crist at 43% of the vote. And again, a pretty sizable lead that we're looking at here. Libby, Kelly, if you'd like to hop in here, I'm going to be paying attention to our comments here as well.
Kelly, is this unexpected?
I don't think so. No, I think that he, again, no, it's not unexpected. But I mean, you hear it when you walk around out of the state. People love Ron DeSantis, and I think he's been a great leader for the state of Florida. And Jim said a couple times running for president. Honestly, I've talked to people when you saw it in the debate, and no one seemed to be worried about whether or not he ran for president. They want him to be. I mean, he's going to be our governor, and if he should decide to run to president, I think people are going to be on board with that too. It's not a problem. He's been a great leader for our state.
And we have 43% of precincts reporting in the race for U.S. Senate between Marco Rubio and Val Demings. And interestingly, let's look at these numbers side by side, if we can. We're going to just flip back and forth between them. So 54 to 55% for Rubio, 44% for Demings. And if we turn to now the governor's race, it's quite similar, but maybe an extra percentage point and a half for Governor DeSantis. As far as these votes falling along party lines, there's just a little bit of that extra vote right now for Governor Ron DeSantis. We're paying attention to a lot of respective feeds. We're also getting ready for our 8 o'clock newscast here. So we have another 3 minutes before we toss things over to our broadcast partners on WFLA News Channel 8. And to our interactive audience on WFLA's YouTube page and Facebook Live page, we are paying attention to your comments. But let's scroll through a couple more races. Let's go back to the AG race here really quickly. And anybody hop in as I scroll through these races. Anyone can hop in at any time. 12% reporting for Ashley Moody and Armis Ayala. This is a race that is expected to go in Ashley Moody's favor. Let's go now to the CFO race between Jimmy Petronas and Adam Hattersley. The incumbent with approximately an 11 to 12 percentage point lead. Going to the Ag Commissioner race, 55 and 44. We're starting to see a pattern here with 55 to 45, that range with some of these results coming in. Those are the statewide races, but now we're going to see things change a little bit as we go through district races. And this race is fascinating, is it not? Darren Soto, 93,000 votes for Scotty Moore, 79,000 votes. A long way to go here. But this was a race that some had theorized was going to be one of the first called in the Tampa Bay area, or at least in Central Florida. And it still might be. Look, we know that certain precincts are going to, come in from certain sections of that of that district and could swing things dramatically, especially when you're talking about a district like District 9. However, relatively close. And also, too, similar as far as, again, a 55 to 45-ish kind of split, just this time in the opposite direction. Jim, do you want to?
So, yeah, Representative Soto, who served with Senator Starr, and I know him well, too, is a very strong representative. He keeps in touch with his folks. He's doing very well in Washington. He works well with Democrats and Republicans in the Florida delegation. Tonight is a night where a Democrat who wins by a healthy margin, which he will, it shows their strength as a candidate and office holder. I think you're going to see that. I also think, going back to what the senator said, this is a reflection on the Hispanic vote. This is a heavily Puerto Rican district. A lot of Puerto Ricans in Florida don't necessarily vote unless you give them a reason to do so. And so the turnout in this race will be very important. There's a significant Puerto Rican population here in the Tampa area, and it's a growing part of the state. And they are Democratic voters under the right circumstances. And one of those issues is economic. And tonight, that is not a good issue for Democrats because the president has to take responsibility, whether he deserves it or not, for what he inherited and what he's trying to clean up in terms of post-COVID and inflation. And so Darren Soto, I think, is going to outperform a lot of other Democrats tonight because of his strength as a candidate.
And again, with a third of precincts reporting, we still got a lengthy way to go here. Kelly, do you have any, before I move on to another race? Let's go on to District, we're just going to fly through them here. District 11, again, Daniel Webster, sizable lead over Shantae Munns. District 12, right now, Gus Bilirakis, also sizable lead, and this race might be very close to getting called with 75% of precincts reporting. We've got District 13. We've been talking about it. It's the big one, but now Paulina Luna is in the lead. But as far as, again, precincts reporting, again, very long way to go. That is just too early to really read any tea leaves. U.S. House District 14, Kathy Castor trying to stave off a challenge from James Judge. About half of precincts reporting coming in here, approximately a 16 percentage point difference in this race. Let's go over to District 15. Laurel Lee, Alan Cohn, 71% precincts reporting, and a pretty big lead, a lead that's getting a little bit larger here.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about this race. And Senator ran a very admirable campaign in the primary. This was a tough race. What I want to point out is this is a swing seat in a normal year. In a presidential election year, this race can go either way. So the fact tonight that she enjoys such a margin is probably a reflection on what's happening in the state tonight. She's a strong candidate. Alan Cohn has a lot going for him too, but that is a remarkable margin right now.
We are going to take a break. We're going to be sending things over to WFLA News Channel 8. We also have on standby Tara Newsom, who's going to be joining the panel here in just a moment. We're going to send things over now to WFLA News Channel 8. We are back in approximately 10 to 15 minutes live from the Stream Center, your local election headquarters. Again, Kelly Stargell, Libby Dean, Jim Davis, and joining the panel here momentarily, Tara Newsom. But do we have some news coming in?
Yeah, U.S. House District 14, AP called it, Kathy Castor. District 15 is Laurel Lee, DeSantis, and
we're going to come back to these in just a moment. And Rubio has now officially been called. So let's quickly, everybody, let's just transition.
They closed it 1 minute after the polls closed.
And again, as Jim Davis is noting here, 1 minute after the Central Time Zone polls have closed, Senator Marco Rubio projected to win another term in the U.S. Senate, staving off competition from Congresswoman Val Demings. The projection coming in from the Associated Press, again, Senator Marco Rubio winning in a race that, of course, people have been honing in on nationally. We do have to send things over here momentarily to our broadcast coverage, but really quickly, I'd like to just get 10 seconds from each of you. Kelly, Jim, your reaction to Rubio defeating Demings.
Yeah, he's not a surprise at all. He's tested, he's proven, he's shown what he can do, and I think that reflected tonight in the polls.
I think Val Demings ran a very strong campaign against tremendous headwinds. I think we're going to see more of Val Demings, but I think this reflects what we're going to see at the end of the night is a very strong Republican turnout and problems with the Democratic turnout tonight, which often happens in an election year when the party in power has to pay the price for governing.
We're going to be sending things over now to WFLA News Channel 8. Allison Henning at the headquarters right here at the Tampa Convention Center for Governor Ron DeSantis.
Here in Florida. I don't think the crowd here has gotten that word quite yet, but I'm sure we'll hear the roaring once they do. The crowd, I know, is waiting for Governor DeSantis to take the stage and what will be a victory speech here tonight. Sounds like they just got the news here tonight. You can hear the crowd cheering for the victory for the Republican Party tonight. See all the signs in the air. Again, it is a packed house here at the Tampa Convention Center. So Governor DeSantis, he should be taking the stage here hopefully soon. I know the crowd wants to hear from him. He will be having another 4 years, hopefully, in the governor's office. So as soon as we do hear that he is coming on stage, of course, we'll bring that to you live. For now, that's the latest we have from the Tampa Convention Center. We'll send it back to you guys in the studio.
All right, thank you, Allison. I do believe we have some breaking news right now.
That's right. Right now we are going to have that for you on Great 38 and of course right here on WFLA News.
Let's see if we can get some. Are we headed to Melissa Marino in St. Pete, or if somebody could let us know where you'd like us to go?
Well, hey guys, we are here at the Hilton in Carillon. This is in St. Petersburg. We're still waiting for Charlie Crist to get here. As you heard, though, DeSantis just declared the winner. It doesn't seem like anyone here has talked about that just yet. We know Hernandez is here, his running mate, so certainly we're going to go check in with them. But we do have a crowd of supporters here for Charlie Crist, so we're waiting to get reaction from everyone as this breaking news has just come out. So we're going to check with them, and we're going to stay here at this watch party and keep you updated. Back to you guys.
Continues with incumbent Senator Marco Rubio. Now, of course, he's hoping to retain the seat he's held since 2011.
And 8 on your side's Jeff Patterson joins us live from Miami, where Senator Rubio and his supporters are watching those results come in tonight. Jeff?
Good evening. It just got very, very loud here as those election results are now being projected on the big screens behind me, and Marco Rubio's supporters very happy to see that NBC has now projected that he is the winner in his race over Val Demings. So this crowd now being very excited as the various networks are starting to project these races, and we are keeping up with this. We have not yet heard when Marco Rubio might come out and address this crowd, but of course we'll keep you posted as we hear anything about when the senator. Now that the election results are starting to come in, now that the polls all across.
Back here live on your local election headquarters, a projection. The race has been called for Florida governor. Governor Ron DeSantis defeating former Governor Charlie Crist. As we look here at the live results on your screen here live from your local election headquarters, 48% of precincts reporting, but early enough for it to be called. 57% of the vote for Governor Ron DeSantis, 42.5% of the vote for Charlie Crist. J.B. Buno, Libby Dean, Kelly Stargel, state senator, Jim Davis, former gubernatorial candidate, here live with you in the Stream Center. Kelly, let's start with you. Your reaction. Governor DeSantis earning another 4-year term through voters here in Florida.
I think people keep saying that he was alt-right, extreme right, pull right. It's not, and I think that just shows a little bit of how some of the Democratic Party is a little bit out of touch with the average American who just wants to live and work and raise their own family without government intrusion. That was his agenda. That was his agenda of common sense, putting parents first, children first, the economy first, working people first, and I think that showed tonight in the polls.
Jim, what are your reactions?
Well, I have a different view of the governor. I think if you disagree with this governor right now, you're at risk of being punished. And you pick the Tampa Bay raise. We're supporting gun safety, and he singled that out as a reason to cut their funding. I'm concerned about how much power he's going to have now. I don't think it's healthy for any party or person to have as much power as Governor DeSantis has, and particularly given his ambitions to be president. But he won the election tonight. He's now our governor. We need to help him do his job.
So now that we have this projection here, let's talk about that 2024 potential. 2 years in, say he is in that primary. What does that mean, for Floridians who are looking to their governor, but he is campaigning for president?
So I think that I don't know that he'll be off campaigning for president. I think the agenda of what he's done is whether it's going to resonate if he should try to run for president. But we've got a bench here in Florida. We've got a lot of good Republicans all down through our cabinet. You've got strong leaders in our House and our Senate who are experienced and know how to be leaders and run. So it doesn't stress me out to see him if he should decide to run for president. We'll be okay here in the state of Florida.
I have a different view. This is the first time we've talked about the fact we have a lieutenant governor. With all due respect, Lieutenant Governor, who the senator knows, nobody knows who this person is. We have a major property insurance crisis in this state, and it's only going to get worse. We need a governor who's very focused. Our test scores just came in. We're not doing that well, and we need to do a lot better. Florida needs a governor who is full-time. It's going to be very difficult for this governor to serve the state of Florida, given our opportunities and challenges in campaign for president, and turn it over to the lieutenant governor. The other concern I have is the temptation this governor is going to have to use the Florida legislature and state government to advance his ambitions for president. The agenda for the state of Florida is not the same agenda as being the Republican nominee for president of the United States. So the governor now faces a very horrific balancing act.
To talk about Jeanette Nunez really quickly, and that name, of course, now starting to resonate with people here in Florida because that would be the governor of the state should Governor DeSantis decide to run in 2024. So there's competing ways of looking at it. As far as her being the lieutenant governor for the state, anyone who's the lieutenant governor behind Governor Ron DeSantis is likely going to be in a significantly large shadow. But at the same time, we cover a lot of Governor DeSantis press conferences. I see him tour the state. He will often go into various bars, establishments. He'll go into various warehouses and small businesses and hold press conferences. And Jeanette Nunez is not somebody who you frequently see when he is going around doing bill signings or making announcements as to his intentions for the future of our state. So Kelly, we're talking about the lieutenant governor here for the first time on this stream. And what do people need to know about her? And do you anticipate her being next in line should Governor Ron DeSantis run for the White House in 2024?
And again, we don't know that that's what Governor DeSantis' ambitions are. And I think we're getting a little bit ahead of our skis to talk about it so much today on the day he was just elected for governor. But if for some reason he should choose to, Jeanette Nunez, I've served with her. She is a very good leader. She's a different style of leader, but she knows the policy. She works hard. She is a mom who has been taken on this role and done it effectively. She was a leader in the House when she served there. So I have no concerns with her ability to lead. Just because she leads more quietly doesn't mean that she doesn't lead effectively. We have another projection to note. I want to really quickly, before we wrap up on DeSantis, we're going to be coming back to DeSantis and Crist, folks. But really quickly, that projection, want to make this clear, was via NBC News, and we expect others, whether it be News Nation on Decision Desk HQ or the Associated Press, to be also calling respective races as well. We have another projection, and this one is coming in from News Nation via Decision Desk HQ, and we're taking you now to District 15, as Laurel Lee has been projected to be the winner in District 15 over Alan Cohen. This is a race, too, that was relatively high profile in the Tampa Bay area, but Laurel Lee, with 94% of precincts reporting, she will be heading to Washington and serving in Congress as the Republican representative from District 15. Kelly, Jim, I'd like to hear from you both, but Kelly, let's start with you. That's incredible margin. She did a really good campaign. She ran a hard campaign. And again, she identified with the people in this area. Those are better margins than some of your incumbents are seeing. So that was a very good margin for her in what was originally thought to be more of a swing district. It's one of the new districts that had only performed, I believe it was a +4, what they were anticipating when you compared the last election. So to have that kind of a margin is a good testament to her and her campaign.
Jim.
The thing that stood out to me about this, and the senator was in the primary, was that Laurel Lee resisted the temptation to pander to the Trump agenda. And she did so with some risk, and I presume she did that as a matter of conviction. And I think it paid off for her in the general election. She showed some independence. And I think at the end of the day, Floridians expect, whether it's the governor or our members of Congress, to show some backbone, some spine, some independence from their own political party. And I think that characteristic of Laurel Lee served her well in this general election.
And we're standing by for Laurel Lee speaking at her campaign headquarters. Before we go over there, just want to show you news has gotten out at the Tampa Convention Center with Governor Ron DeSantis. People are starting to wave their signs. There is a very large and loud crowd of supporters at the Tampa Convention Center for Governor Ron DeSantis right here in Tampa tonight. So a lot of key races that we are following. But let's welcome you back into the Stream Center. JB, Libby Dean, Jim Davis, Kelly Stargell. They were all on the laptops. We're all checking out results as they're coming in. But let me break down the old news for those of you just joining us. We've got Ron DeSantis beating Charlie Crist. That race called by NBC News. DeSantis getting another 4 years in office in Tallahassee. Again, that race being called by NBC News. Marco Rubio getting another 6 years. NBC News calling that race, defeating Congresswoman Val Demings, and Laurel Lee via News Nation Decision Desk being named the winner in the U.S. House District 15 right here in the Tampa Bay area. We are going to be welcoming in Tara Newsom here momentarily once we do, start to swap out some guests. Libby, how you doing over there? You good?
Yep, I'm good. I'm glad we're getting some results here,
Yeah.
This is what we've been waiting for, JV.
I know we have to swap you out in just a couple of minutes,
Right.
but how much, what are you paying attention to over there on that laptop?
I have a tweet deck up with all of these different, we have NBC News Nation, all the ones that we follow for calling these races. So I have that up right now, as well as Florida Division of Elections, AP, too many tabs, to say the least. I know that y'all are like me with too many tabs right now, just Xing out, going to the next one, going back. What are the main ones that y'all are seeing right now? I mean, obviously we're seeing the governor's race and Rubio with the projections.
One of the things I'm watching is how the margin of victory.
Jim, I'm so sorry to interrupt. Laurel Lee speaking here live. Let's listen in on WFLA now.
She's walking on fire. This girl is on fire. Looks like a girl, but she's a flame. So bright she can burn your eyes. Better look the other way. You can try, but you'll never.
We have so much to celebrate tonight. I want to begin by thanking all of you. Those of you who are here tonight did so much to support this campaign from its inception. Whether you took a yard sign or told your neighbors or made a contribution or waved at voters today on Election Day, each of you was an essential part of making this night happen. And I want you to know something about this room full of people. We have here together tonight Republicans and Democrats and independents and people who have never been involved in a political campaign at all until they chose to get involved in this one. We have friends and neighbors and civic leaders, elected leaders, past and present, who span generations. This group is a reflection of how much as a community we all share. We share a desire for our country to be prosperous and strong and safe, for our children to have a great education and great opportunities, for our values to be represented well in government, and for our government to be accountable to the people. There is so much more that unites us all than divides us, and as your voice in Congress, I look forward to reflecting all of these values and to representing all of you. And I want the voters of Congressional District 15 to know that I am honored to represent them, both those who supported me today and those who did not, those who share my political party and those who don't. I am honored to be the person who will represent you in Washington, D.C., because this election tonight is about more than political parties and more than particular candidates. It is about working together to achieve a bright future for our country. There are so many people to thank tonight, and I want to begin with my incredible campaign team. Mark Reichelderfer, Kevin Riley, Audie Canny, Rachel Stazone, Carson Young, Bobby Combs, our incredible comms team, Sarah and Lindsay, and the entire Bascom firm. If you all would please raise your hands. Kim Simon also is not officially on the team, but this group, there was no job too big or too small. For a campaign on this scale, it is remarkable what they accomplished together. And I am so incredibly grateful to have a team that was not only so competent, but to a person, good people who represented me and represented all of you in a way that we can be so proud of. Together with the countless volunteers and community members who were willing to step forward and help, they accomplished incredible things. I also want to thank, we have some, I know Mayor Rick Lott is here tonight, and he, along with many other current and former elected officials, lent us their good names and put their support behind me at a time that it made all the difference and really spoke to our community about their confidence in me and what we could do together. So I want to thank them. In particular, I want to thank our former tax collector, Doug Belden, who couldn't be here this evening, but he was absolutely a tireless advocate. If you ever have to run for office, I know he said this was going to be his last campaign for which he ever volunteered, but I will tell you, if you ever have to run for office, Doug Belden is who you want on your team. He is a tireless champion. Also, Dick Greco and Linda Greco couldn't be here tonight, but were incredible champions from the very outset of this campaign. I am so grateful to them and to all of the current and former elected officials and community leaders who got involved and were willing to support us from the outset. Each of you, whether you told your friends and neighbors, showed up at an event, simply gave me the opportunity to talk to you about my background and what I wanted to do in Congress. This is about you. This is about your work, your belief, and your vision for our community.
As we welcome you back here live on WFLA Now, let's introduce our latest panelist. Tara Newsom is joining us, political science professor at St. Petersburg College. Great to have Tara on stream. We, of course, have had her on WFLA News Channel 8 earlier, and now we welcome her into our panel. Before we go to Tara for some of her insight on some of the races that have already been called, again, a quick reminder for those of you just joining us, Ron DeSantis has defeated Charlie Crist, that race projected by NBC News, and Marco Rubio defeating Congresswoman Val Demings, that race being called by NBC News as well. That brings us to our reporter, Jeff Patterson, who's covering Marco Rubio and Val Demings tonight. Jeff, let's bring you into the stream. Good to have you on. What is the tenor like where you're joining us from? And remind our audience where you're joining us from.
Good to be with you, JB. Well, we are at Rubio Election Night headquarters here in Miami, not far from where the senator grew up. And I would say about 2 hours ago, people started streaming in. They started gathering. They've been watching election returns up on the big screens behind me. And as you can imagine, as the projections have come forward, as the election totals have come in, and now that Senator Rubio has been projected the winner over Val Demings, this crowd erupted, and it got very loud in here when those projections were shown on those big screen TVs. Of course, these are the people who have been working for the Rubio campaign here in the Miami area. And of course, the senator has been crisscrossing the state. He has been pushing out a message that crime is a problem, that immigration is a problem, and inflation is a problem. And apparently that message hit home with the number of voters here in Florida as we continue to see a shift in this state of more Republicans registered in Florida than Democrats now, which is a substantial change over the past elections. And that change now being reflected today in the election tallies. And of course, with Senator Rubio being projected a winner, these folks behind me are very happy. We have not yet heard when Senator Rubio might come out and speak to this crowd, but we would expect that would be rather soon, sooner rather than later. JB?
Jeff, we're seeing a lot of these races called a little bit earlier than expected. I mean, really, right after the clock turned over to 8 o'clock Eastern time, 7 o'clock Central time, of course, when the polls closed in the Central time zone out on the Panhandle. Is there surprise at your location at Rubio headquarters that the race was called as early as it was?
I would say not surprised here. These people, of course, have been working very hard for Marco Rubio, and they are the faithful. These are the people who would think that Marco is going to win no matter what the polls say. So even the fact that, as Jack Royer has pointed out tonight, he's with the Val Demings campaign, that Val Demings outspent Marco Rubio in this campaign by a substantial margin, which is somewhat surprising given the campaign coffers of the Republicans in this state, but it shows just how valuable this race is to the Democratic Party, the fact that they were willing to invest so much into Val Demings, Congresswoman running for the U.S. Senate for the first time, the former Orlando police chief, now trying to work her way into the U.S. Senate. But Marco Rubio has great name recognition throughout this state. And of course, as I mentioned, there are now more registered Republicans in Florida than Democrats, and certainly that has a lot to do with the swing in the state that we're starting to see tonight. And of course, the redistricting in Florida and the fact that the Republicans had control of that process and were able to mark their districts how they wanted is a substantial factor in this election. Not so much in the U.S. Senate race, but in other races down the ticket. It is a factor. But tonight, Marco Rubio and his supporters obviously happy with the way this election has gone.
News Channel 8's Jeff Patterson reporting for us from Marco Rubio's HQ in South Florida. Jeff, thank you so much. We take you now live. Congresswoman Val Demings giving a speech.
Who kept the trains running while I was bouncing between Washington, D.C. and the campaign trail. Y'all give my staff, my amazing team, a round of applause. I don't know if Mayor Dyer is here, but I do want to thank him. I had the honor of serving as Orlando's chief of police, and it was there where I learned that the security and safety of our communities is and always should be our top priority as public servants, and I will never, ever forget that. To my family, you all know how I am. I love to talk about my family. There's not many times that I don't talk about my family, to my sons and to my grandchildren who have strengthened me and stood by me during some nights and tough schedules. You are more precious to me than anything, and I am grateful. But you all also know that I seldom travel alone, that I have the baddest backup possible. I am so honored to call this person my partner. You all know him as Orlando's former police chief, Orange County's former public safety director, Orange County's former sheriff, and current mayor of Orange County, my husband, Jerry Demings. No, 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 I did not get here alone. No man or woman is an island unto ourselves. My parents, y'all know how much I talk about them. The maid and the janitor, Eloise and James Butler. I remember.
We're now going to check in, everybody, with Paulina Luna speaking live.
From Mexico City. And so what I can tell you is, I don't like identity politics because first and foremost, I'm an American, but I do understand that there's a lot of young girls that, especially in politics, look up to someone like myself, and I like to tell my story because I don't have a particularly normal upbringing and background, but again, going back to really being the American dream and what we have access to, if you work hard in this country, regardless of whatever circumstances that you're born into, you can really attain anything, and so I'm really honored to, I'm stoked. I'm honored, yeah.
And that's Paulina Luna speaking live. And that race, of course, still yet to be called. A lot of focus on that race here in the state of Florida as we welcome you back in, talking about District 13, live election results on your screen. And we're still waiting on a refresh on this. Actually, this is going to update here on your screen momentarily. But as we wait for that to refresh, let's bring in the entirety of our panel. And let's welcome in again one more time, Tara Newsom. Tara, joining us from St. Petersburg College. She is a professor of political science there. And Tara, let's just get right to this. What is the big takeaway so far as some of these races being called earlier than expected, really right as the time turned over to 8 o'clock Eastern time on the East Coast?
I think the strategy of redistricting in the state of Florida has to be factored in as part of the reason why a lot of this was expected across Florida. I mean, we thought possibly the state would move from purple to maybe light red, but this red wave is really taking Florida.
You said it, not me. You're a red wave.
I guess what I'm surprised at is the piece of redistricting that was really a strategic move is really paying off for Republicans. And as the night goes on, I think that we're going to see that be even more meaningful across the state. But the other piece that's really important is the messaging that the Republican Party had. You know, issues that are real-time issues like crime, inflation, immigration, really strong coalitions across the state. The other piece is micro-campaigning. You know, we talked about the differences in Latino votes from southern part of Florida to the I-4 corridor, different types of micro-campaigning that was addressed to those communities show that no demographic is monolithic, and certainly the Latino vote in Florida is not monolithic, that you have to really address the issues in their communities. And the Republican Party did a very good job doing that.
As we take a look at some of the most recent numbers, and we're going to scroll through them here on your screen. Let's go to, again, Governor Ron DeSantis, 72% of the precincts reporting. I'm going to send this over to the three of you. Looking here at the margin is really what I'm paying attention to you. I think all of you are as well. We're talking about right now a nearly 17 percentage point difference. Various polls were pointed to over the course of this process, Kelly and Jim. I don't remember seeing too many polls that had it this wide. So polling, look, it comes down to various people and whether or not they believe that polling is truly authentic. And I think it gets, of course, you can get really into the weeds and the science of polling. But we look here at the 17 percentage point difference, Kelly, and you just heard Tara mention this being, is this a symbol of a red wave? Now, and Jim, I want to get your response to this too, because you called Florida a purple state. But I think that the argument now has been made and established that we're talking more reddish purple than purple if you were, depending on your vantage point. Kelly?
Yeah, I think we've moved from purple into red. And Tara had mentioned earlier a little about redistricting. This is not a redistricting situation when you're looking at the governor's race. So it just shows where the people are in the state of Florida. The redistricting maps that we just did were the first time ever, I think first time, or at least recently, in at least last few decades, it's never had a challenge. They had no challenges on the House and Senate maps as far as at the state level. And that's where you're seeing these really high numbers that were unexpected are at the House and Senate at the state level. And then it's also showing up in the congressional level. So I just think it's a message that our governor and the House and the Senate with the policies that we've done just resonated well where the average person is. And I said it earlier, and part of the reason I got into this process is just a regular average mom raising my kids and wanted government to kind of back off, and that was an agenda I took on. And that's kind of what you saw in the state of Florida was we need freedom, free state of Florida. It was a slogan, not just a slogan. It worked. It's true. It's what people want is freedom.
Yeah, and let me remind our audience how as far as this being as wide as it is, and look, there's still 28% of precincts to be reported, so there could be a gap shrinkage. But if we go back to 2018, we're talking about Ron DeSantis and Andrew Gillum, a race that came down to fewer than 33,000 votes being the difference. Razor thin of a margin did DeSantis win that race over Gillum. And now we're talking about a 16, 17. Look, we got time. But we're paying attention to this as we are also paying attention to the margin between Rubio and Demings. But Jim, I'd like to bring you in as far as the margin here. Florida Democrats cannot be liking what they're seeing across the state.
No, and I think Florida's going to stand out tonight when you see where the rest of the country comes in. But it will be a good night for Republicans. Just a question of how good. This is the price you pay for the party in power. And again, I think President Biden is going to take his lumps tonight in his party for making some difficult choices about how we move forward and come out of COVID. But back to Florida. Look, the Governor DeSantis and the Republican Party, you got to give them credit, they got their votes out, and the Democrats did not get their votes out. And the Democrats that win tonight are very, very strong candidates and very strong office holders, and there'll be another day. I still think we're purple. We are more bruised and battered purple tonight than purple in terms of elections. But Florida is still a divided state, and what we now have, and the senator alluded to that, is you have probably a supermajority of Republican legislators who are pretty much going to do whatever the governor says and will be afraid to challenge him, just as a lot of politicians are afraid to challenge Donald Trump. And Florida is about to veer much further to the right, whether it's a woman's right to choose, it's privatizing schools, it's the way that our government is run. And I don't think that's where Florida is, but we'll find out.
Let's go now live to the camp of Charlie Crist. I believe he might have just wrapped up speaking. Let's just listen in here really quickly live on WFLA Now. And as I understand it, it was a very brief speech from Charlie Crist. Jim?
Just one further point that I think this is something the senator and I agree on, which is the margin tonight has significant implications for the rest of the state. I mean, I'm watching Hillsborough County, for example, and you have two county commissioners that I think few people expected to be vulnerable who may lose tonight. The transportation referendum, which enjoyed a lot of bipartisan support, is also failing. So the impact of this margin is going to be felt all over the state, probably in school board races as well.
Tara, let's go back to this result. How shocking is this to you as it stands right now? I believe the gap is now widening just a little bit. I'll have to go back and do some math. I'm trying to do math in real time here. 77% of precincts now reporting. Is this gap shocking to you?
Well, I think that the senator's right in the sense that this particular numbers aren't a result of redistricting. They're more of a result of the really strong coalition of Republican messaging that they put together and the get out the vote. Republicans were energized, and they continue to be with Governor DeSantis, and it could be that Charlie Crist and the Democratic Party just were not able to get out the vote and energize their base. But what is now the next day, when we look at this, what will this mean? You know, in 2024, we're going to have to see whether the policies and the individuals that are elected, if they can carry that strong support. And I think that I'm going to be watching whether that holds true, and that will really be telling on what Jim is saying. Are we moving from a battered and bruised purple state to a real light red or red state, which it sort of looks like at this moment? But you know, there's something else that we have to kind of acknowledge here, and that's the idea that we haven't had at the top of the ticket a strong Democratic candidate, and that's something to consider. And so Charlie Crist was sort of a recycled candidate that is a really good heart of a servant, but maybe hadn't moved into the kind of politics that Florida is ready to embrace. The other piece, though, that I think is interesting is that there was a lot of fervor and down ticket activity, and rather than the top of the ticket driving down, maybe some of the local races drove it up. But certainly what I've been watching all day is the no party affiliate, the independent voter. And what this election really tells me is that we need to dive deep into the data, really look at how the no party affiliate or the independent voter really voted, and what does that mean for 2024?
So as far as the, you mentioned Charlie Crist as a recycled candidate. Congresswoman Val Demings was considered to be that fresh face, especially after serving as impeachment manager in the impeachment of Donald Trump, getting a whole lot of national exposure. There was some talk, some gossip out there. Normally we don't report on gossip, but we're talking about now, eons ago, that it was going to be Congresswoman Demings challenging Governor Ron DeSantis. But now, of course, we have Congresswoman Demings going up against Marco Rubio, and that was considered to be a strategic move because it was generally widely assumed that DeSantis was less vulnerable than Marco Rubio was, and that Congresswoman Demings' chances at an upset were better trying to tackle Rubio than it would be Governor DeSantis, and also, too, more national implications at play with the balance of the U.S. Senate. So as far as now the identity, and I'll go to you, Jim, on this, the identity of Florida Democrats going forward, you have Charlie Crist, who was the selected person to go up against, defeating Nikki Fried in the primary, picked over Fried, who would have been more of a fresh face for certain as far as Florida voters go. But it's Charlie Crist, it's Val Demings, both of them losing tonight. What is we know the direction that Florida Republicans are going. It's up. Florida Democrats, are they now searching for an identity here?
Yeah, I think there's going to be regrouping, and you learn more when you lose than when you win. When you win, you think you did everything right, which is never true. And I think you're going to see a rising generation of young leaders. And I think you're going to see a reaction to what I believe is going to be a veer to the far right in Tallahassee. That's not where the state is, and I think people will react to that. The presidential election will be the next test. Florida clearly has something to prove now. We are not a stagnant state. We are constantly changing. We are like a giant conveyor belt. You've got people moving in. You've got people that, are outliving a lot of their savings and their good health, and they're not going to be around. And so Florida is changing. So I think any politician that thinks Florida is the same state 2 years from now does so at their peril. So I think the governor's going to have to continue to earn the goodwill of the Florida voters, dealing with Hurricane Ian, dealing with property insurance. And I think the next election cycle, Florida's going to have to prove that we still are a purple state.
Senator Marco Rubio speaking live.
He'll come again, and because of him, we will be able to live an eternal life. And obviously, I'm grateful for winning an election, but I'm really grateful for all the blessings I've been given, the friendships, obviously the family, this extraordinary honor to represent this extraordinary state, and the chance to be a citizen of the greatest country in the history of mankind. So I'm going to tell you right now what the media stories are going to be. They're going to be, this is amazing. The Republicans won by, 13 points, 15 points. It's unbelievable. They won Miami-Dade County. They must be believing all those Cuban radio stations or whatever they come up with. Guys, you know what? Politics is really not that complicated because Americans are not all that complicated. We're a diverse people, but we're not a complicated people. What Americans basically want is what my parents wanted. It's what all of you wanted. It's what people want all over the world but have been able to fulfill here. They want to be able to have a job that pays a decent wage. They want to be able to live in a home that they own, in a neighborhood that is safe. They want their kids to go to schools that teach truth. They want to be able to retire with dignity, and they want all four of their kids to have a life better than the life they've had. This is not complicated. This is what they want. Now, here's what happens. Sometimes people get into politics, and either they don't know this or they forget it. And so what happens is some of these people go around saying, look, I'm sorry you're paying too much money for gasoline, but you have to suck it up. Because we have a UN climate conference that John Kerry is going to be attending, and we need to impress them. And so ride your bike or take the bus and forget about how much gas costs and stop being selfish. You know what happens when you tell people that? They vote against you. They vote against you. They go around telling people, listen, don't worry, you can't be complaining about crime. We can't keep locking criminals up. We can't keep arresting criminals. We can't keep funding police officers. Because the only way we can make up for whatever it is they think we need to make up for is not to put criminals in jail. Crime soars, people feel unsafe. And you know what happens when you tell that to working people in this country? They vote against you. And then they go and tell them, forget about our border. We don't need a border. We care more about people that came from other countries. And listen, nobody's going to give this community a lesson about how bad things are in other places. But what country in the world can accept 6,000 people a day? And that's what they're asking you and everyone else to do. Meanwhile, we have veterans committing suicide, veterans who are homeless, veterans that have to fight with the VA. But no, they don't care about that. All they care about is we have to be compassionate for people coming from all over the world, 6,000 a day, and put aside the interest of the American people. When you tell that to people, you know what they do? They vote against you. And this has been going on for far too long. And then here comes election time, and they roll out all their friends, every celebrity, every actor. We don't have any actors really on our side, do we? Do we have any actors? No actors that can get another movie are going to be on our side. They roll out those crazy women on The View. They roll out Vogue magazine. They roll out all these things to tell us how we're supposed to vote. And they think they're going to fool people. And then when people vote against them, they say, oh, it's just information, you were confused. No one here is confused. The people in this country are going to vote for the people that fight for people like them. They're going to vote for people that are going to fight for people that care about being safe, that don't want drugs coming across our border, that don't want illegal immigration running rampant into our country, that don't want to have to pay $4 for gasoline, that don't want to have to pay 22% more than they used to for their groceries. So when you see the results across this country tonight, that's what it's all about. The people who make this country great have been forgotten and have been left behind. And what I'm most proud of is that this community, Miami-Dade, and this state, Florida, a diverse state, you find people in the state from everywhere. You find people in the state from every background. And they have joined this incredible new movement that isn't just going to change the country, it's going to change the Republican Party. After tonight, the Republican Party will never be the same, and that's a great thing for America and a great thing for Republicans. It'll never be the same, because this is a party made up of people from every color, every race, every ethnicity, men and women. Yes, men and women, that exists. And you know what we call people who are black and white and Hispanic and Asian and are men and are women and come from other countries? You know what we call them in Florida? We call them Americans. And that's what they are. They are Americans. And if we're not going to fight for, listen, I care a lot about what's happening in the world. We're impacted by what happens in the world. But my job, first and foremost, is to care about what's happening in America. Because the best thing we can do for the world is make sure that America is strong and safe and prosperous. That is the greatest gift we can give our fellow men. So these campaigns, I believe, no, I'm sure, actually, I am the only statewide candidate in Florida that was outspent by my opponent. She has every right to raise all this money. They wasted a lot of money, and I'm glad they wasted it here and not in these other states that we have a chance to win. I'm the only one that raised more money against it. I'm the only one that was outraised and outspent, and I'm fine with that. I'm 100% fine, because I knew that no amount of money was going to convince people that escaped Marxism and socialism that America should embrace Marxism and socialism. No amount of money was going to convince people that somehow a country blessed with oil and natural gas should be begging Saudi Arabia for oil and natural gas and begging Venezuela for oil and natural gas. But we had a tough campaign, and I owe a lot, and there's a lot of people I could thank, but my campaign manager, Mark Morgan, has done a great job. Where's Mark? Mark. Great job, Mark. Hey, listen, what did Albert Guedes say? Un americano que a una fiesta cubano está loco. Remember that line? The translation there is an American that goes to a Cuban party has to be out of his mind. But Mark has done a great job in an extraordinary and diverse state. We are a great state. Thank you, Mark.
As we welcome you back into your local election headquarters, Tara Newsom, Senator Kelly Stargel, and of course Jim Davis back here with you live on WFLA Now. We're going to start to go through some of the races. We know the races that have been called. We've, of course, made a lot of the major races being called, that being DeSantis over Charlie Crist and Rubio over Demings in the two most high-profile races, but there are still races, many of them undecided, especially with implications for the Tampa Bay area. So let's go live through them and start with a race that we haven't brought up here in quite some time. Let's go to the three statewide races that are undecided at this moment, and we start here, as we understand it, with the Florida Attorney General's race. Again, widely expected to be for Ashley Moody. She has a very similar 16 to 17 percentage point lead. This is going to be the theme of the statewide races. Going now to the CFO race, Jimmy Petronis. There it is again, 16 to 17% over Adam Hattersley. Waiting for check marks on any of these races, and we'll let you know as soon as they've been called. The AG race here as well. This one, I think, a little bit closer at about 14 percentage points of a difference, 52% of precincts reporting, but Wilton Simpson right now over Naomi Blemmer. This race, of course, interesting because Nikki Fried has been the agriculture commissioner and the only Democrat in statewide office here in the state of Florida. So if it is a Republican position now, it is widely believed that, of course, we're going to have even more Republicans in statewide office. Let's go now to the congressional races. Going now to District 9. This one is something that we're paying very close attention to, but it looks like the lead is going to be too much for Scotty Moore to make up with this. I'm surprised this race hasn't been called yet. There might be some more conservative districts that are yet to have their precincts reported, because there's only 2% of precincts still to be reported in this race in District 9. But I don't think that the math lines up. You can't make that up. There's just no way. So this is a race that hasn't been called, to my understanding, unless I have missed a note from our team. But it is widely anticipated that Darren Soto will win in District 9, barring just numbers being wrong at this point. That's the only way I can see that race changing. Let's go to District 11, Daniel Webster. This race has been called, so we can officially let you know this is a projection in District number 9. Daniel Webster is your winner here over Shantae Munns, picking up 63% of the vote. A very wide discrepancy here, but no surprise that Daniel Webster defeating Shantae Munns with nearly 2/3 of the vote in U.S. House District 11. Let's go now to District 12. Gus Bilirakis, another projection that we can call with check marks. Gus Bilirakis defeating Kimberly Walker for the 3rd time. So this is another race that was widely expected to go in favor of the incumbent, Gus Bilirakis, heading back to Washington with 200,000 votes in his longtime district. Again, getting back to District 13 now, this is the one that we're really paying close attention to, but we probably have some error, and I'm going to confer with our team as to why these numbers aren't updating. This is very bizarre. But I am seeing a check mark there on Paulina Luna's name, so I'm not sure if that race has been called. This race is very important, but it has thrown our system for a loop,
0%
Kelly.
in, and it's been called. There you go.
I do not understand what happened to our election graphics, but this race, it's just bugging out at the moment. District 14, Kathy Castor. We can call this race. 76% of precincts reporting, and it's Kathy Castor once again heading back to Washington. Stiff competition, of course, from James Judge, who put on quite a campaign here in Tampa Bay, but it's going to be Kathy Castor winning that seat. And again, very little surprise. This was going to be a very, very difficult flip for Florida Republicans. Kathy Castor getting 56.5% of the vote there. Let's go to District 15. And we talked about this, Laurel Lee, Alan Cohen. This race has been previously called. A win for Laurel Lee. We heard her victory speech a short time ago. Going now to District 16. Again, zero surprise, but we will throw up the projection graphic just because we do have a projection in this race. No surprise whatsoever that Vern Buchanan is going to be representing District 19 again, defeating Jan Snyder, picking up 62% of the vote there. 2 more to go to. District 17. Yep, we can call this one as well. Greg Stubbe in a race that was considered to be unwinnable for Andrea Kahle. Greg Stubbe picking up approximately 60 to 70,000 more votes in U.S. House District 17. And then lastly, of the key races that we were watching tonight, another projection. No surprise again. These were races that were widely expected to go the way that they did. Polling was, it wasn't even going to tell a story other than the fact that it was going to go for these respective candidates. So Scott Franklin defeating Keith Hayden in U.S. House District 18.
Can you just go back and call Darren Soto's race? I mean, come on. He was the only one.
It's got to be.
Hate to leave him out. We should.
It hasn't been called, though. Really, they're all getting called now. So, no, the race.
Maybe they're in alphabetical order or something. Just haven't gotten there yet.
I'm waiting for Darren Soto in District 9 to get called, but that will get called for Darren
So Darren Soto's going to win because Senator Stargell is saying something.
I'm going to make a prediction. I think he's going to win.
This is a reflection on his character. He represented parts of Polk County. People that may not have all voted for him, but people respect him and like him. And I think I just want to say one more time, I think if you're a Democrat and you won tonight, that says a lot about your strength and your potential. And I think people do not like one party having too much control. And I think this is an historic night for Florida because Republicans are going to have extraordinary amount of control. And with that's going to come a lot of responsibility and an opportunity to try to build bridges. That has not been Governor DeSantis' style, in my opinion. But, these folks are elected. We're going to try to help them represent the state. It's going to be a challenge.
I have checked. I want to do right by our audience and by you, Kelly, and you, Jim, and you, Tara. The Darren Soto District 9 race has not been called, to much of our surprise. But, Tara, it's got to be stated. This is a race, and I'm seeing a lot of Twitter activity, political experts across the state of Florida pointing out this race. This was a race that was not expected to be even this close within, I believe, what is this, approximately 7 or 8 percentage points.
I think this is the hiccup that we're seeing across all of these campaigns, that the spread between Republicans and Democrats is much greater than what we thought. And that, as an academician, I want to dig in and find out about the messaging in each one of these areas and the differing demographics. I mean, Florida is changing. And like Jim said not too long ago, each election cycle, we're seeing a little bit of a shift in these districts. And so I want to dig in and see how the demographics really play out in this race and why people voted the way they did.
And you can speak, being again a political science professor at St. Pete College, you can speak to just how much combing through the numbers and through the demographics and the analysis that is going to be done in each one of these districts to look at who voted for who and why they did so. This is going to play out over days, weeks, really months, and maybe even years.
Yes, I think it's really going to tell us a lot from the socioeconomic, education, the region of Florida. If we've become more regionalized, like what are all of these little factors that are contributing to these fairly large spreads between the Republican and Democrat? And we've got to understand that so that our government can be responsive to our citizens. And I think that Democrats need to pay attention to it because I don't know what the right word is going to be for tonight in Florida, shellacking or spanking or something else, but it seems like we're taking it on the shoulders for the Democratic Party in Florida. But this is a great race to look at and try to dig into to say, hey, how is the region changing? How is the community changing? And why is it resulting in these kind of spreads?
We do now have a projection. We can make it official. We do have all precincts reporting. Please forgive us. We do not know why there is a glitch in the numbers, but the check mark is there, and the check mark has been confirmed by our team. Paulina Luna, and I'll read the numbers here coming in on your screen. These numbers actually are accurate. We just don't know why the precincts reporting is inaccurate. So this is accurate, actually, I've been told by our team. 53% of the vote to Eric Lynn, who campaigned as a centrist, trying to, of course, attract independent voters in this district. And Tara, you were noting earlier as far as the lines being redrawn and us entering a new chapter of how these districts all intersect with these respective candidates and how all of these, all the various counties come into play in all of these districts. This now, we're starting to see a story getting told with this redistricting.
I think there's two stories going on right now. The one story is certainly the redistricting in some of these areas of the state that really districted out the moderate. And I think the Eric Lynn versus Paulina Luna is a great example. And if you look at the map of Congressional District 13, which is now totally bifurcated from the rest of its original district, and of course it's now 14 and goes to Kathy Castor, that this is a group of folks that are predominantly on the beaches, and they lean more red, and you see the result. Now, I am surprised by the spread of that, but I think the second narrative or the second story that we're all trying to articulate tonight is the power of the Republican messaging and the coalition building. I can't get over how much it resonated with Floridians. And maybe it should be said another way, how the idea of reproductive rights and the threats of democracy, how that wasn't able to capture the imagination of Floridians, whether they be independents or Democrats. It didn't motivate them. But I want to just say this. Tonight is a night that Republicans can celebrate, but in the next few weeks, as we shift over to have Republicans take on the helm of a total majority in the state of Florida, it is going to be interesting to see if it's a vector for those Democrats to come out. We never saw the kind of Democratic flexing as we did in 2020, and maybe this will draw Democrats together. I don't necessarily know, what that'll look like, but this might be the vector that brings them out in 2024.
Kelly?
My takeaway on this is I think back to like the Nixon years of the silent majority. I ran, honestly, a lot of those are being deemed those very controversial, those very right bills, and was getting hate and on the Twitters and on all of the social media and in the press. But I had thousands of people who aren't in those circles say, thank you, keep going, keep doing it. This is the one time that a person has a choice to go out and vote. Every vote's equal. Every person has a say. They may not be speaking it, but it shows you what people feel. And there's a little bit to be said to the messaging, but a lot of it is just the common sense of the things that we're talking about. And I want to jump to some of these more social issues, but in some of these social issues, the average person, they're just living their lives, and they don't want the schools teaching their kids about any kind of an ideology. They don't want the schools involved in those things. They want to be the ones, on some of these hot button issues. The average person, this is the majority speaking. And I think it's not so much about the messaging. It's about, honestly, more of a out of touch that you're hearing from the social media, and a little bit of an out of touch that you're hearing from some of the press on where the average person is. I think it's a rise again of that silent majority.
Let me ask you this, focusing on Paulina Luna here for a moment. She is by far the most high-profile Trump-endorsed candidate in the Tampa Bay area. Of course, we're focusing in on Tampa Bay tonight. And so how does that impact things going forward, knowing that Donald Trump's decision, I can almost see it in my mind, Paulina Luna and Donald Trump on a stage, perhaps within the next couple.
We can all see it.
Yes. It's inevitable. So now, as far as Florida being a battleground in a different respect, with some candidates, of course, getting endorsed by Donald Trump and others not really even requiring that level of an endorsement. There's, of course, this narrative that is going to come into play as to whose state this really is. Is this Donald Trump's state, or is this Governor DeSantis' state? Tara, do you want to weigh in before I hear from Kelly and Jim on this?
Of course, I would demur to the senator if she'd like to speak, but I think that's what tomorrow and the next day going through the data is really going to reveal, is where are these shifts in our voters? Are they shifting so far right? Are they really loyal to DeSantis, or are they really loyal to the Republican brand? How do you separate those? I think it's going to be really interesting with Paulina Luna's her numbers so strong, and her cozying with Donald Trump. If you look at it on a micro level, that's telling me that Florida might be more responsive to Donald Trump than even DeSantis. But we need to flush this all out and see what the candidates. But just that one micro campaign really shows to me that maybe DeSantis doesn't have as deep of a stronghold in Florida as Trump does, and that's going to be interesting to play out.
Kelly, I want to hear from you, but then I have a question for Tara as a follow-up.
I think that it's not an either or. DeSantis and Trump's policies and their agendas are probably very close to identical. So what they're accomplishing, what they're actually getting done, are very similar. Their approaches are different. Obviously, the way that they lead and govern are different. But their accomplishments, and Trump may say, he made DeSantis or whatever. He supported DeSantis because DeSantis was aligned with what he thought. So I think what's getting missed is it's the ideology of the people and the policies and the things that we're getting accomplished. It's not just the politics of the people, of the two leaders. It's a both.
When I talk to people, everyday folks, about the state of Florida politics, it always goes to Trump or DeSantis. It dominates the conversation. And this is going to sound like a dumb question, but because this question gets asked so frequently, I would like to ask it and discuss it with you on stream. All the time, I get asked, why isn't it a Trump-DeSantis ticket in 2024? Now, you have been mentioning, Kelly, I know you're laughing. You have been mentioning how these candidates have more in common than they don't have in common, that there's parallels between them, but they're not exactly allies right now. And there has started to be an escalating in a war of words, and really more one-sided with Donald Trump against Governor DeSantis. And there's just kind of this weird, it's almost as if you've got, two boxers heading in the ring right now, and there's that awkward moment where they're just sizing each other up, and who's going to throw the first punch, the first couple of jabs, and then before you know it, you feel like it's just going to be an all-out brawl. Is that the case? Is that an accurate analogy in your assessment?
I think people watching from the outside who maybe aren't aligned with these two individuals want to see that fight. And I think that's what you're seeing is the ginning up of the fight. And what's getting missed is the policies behind what they're trying to accomplish. And that's what I'm saying is I think before it comes to the end, they're going to work it out. I think it's going to get worked out in some way that it's not either a meeting of the minds or you're going to see, I think both of them will recognize that a head-to-head in the state of Florida going down is not the way to go. But I would, as I said way earlier, I would never pretend to try to speak for whatever I thought Donald Trump may or may not do, because that's a little bit of a wild card.
But then to answer the question, Tara, for the everyday Joe and Jane that ask me on the street and they say, why won't Trump just bring DeSantis onto his ticket? They can run together and bring that red wave across the entire country.
I think it's a great question, and I think that Governor DeSantis actually was ginned up for the fight by former President Trump himself when Trump came out and called him, a name, which I'm not going to give oxygen because it's not good to do that. But I think so. Trump is sort of egging this on, and perhaps the undercurrent that nobody wants to talk about is that these are two very strong political figures that have a lot of ego. And that ego is attractive to a lot of individuals in the party and not in the party, clearly. And so the undercurrent is that they are sizing each other up. But I do think the senator's right. I think at the end of the day, there's going to be some type of negotiation that makes the Republican candidate. But I don't know if that negotiation won't come from a certain amount of persuasion. And that persuasion might come from former President Trump actually using his bully pulpit of a former president to sort of manipulate this.
A lot can happen.
So I think somebody ought to Google the word Trump and negotiation and see how often that pops up.
The art of the deal?
Yeah, not too much. Look, let's be clear what happened on January 6th. It was a threat to our country. There's a lot of very principled conservatives that acknowledge that it was a terrible event, and Donald Trump celebrates that on certain days. He said he's going to pardon the people that were up there. Let's think about that for a minute. I mean, that's a threat to our country. And tonight, people are getting elected to Congress who want him to be the president again.
Well, but that brings us to the point of electability, because there is this widespread belief across the country that Governor DeSantis is the more electable candidate and could capture independence across the country. There was no preventing us talking about 2024 tonight, by the way, especially with the races being called as early as they did. So it's only natural for us to be talking about Florida's political future because people want to know if Governor DeSantis is going to really serve a 4-year term. We have noted, Tara, you and I, about how he has an overwhelming amount of money in that war chest after raising just gobs of money. Where did that money come from? I mean, the amount of money that he raised is just gargantuan.
I got daily tweets. I'm sure other people did too. So
I think, though, what Jim is bringing up is really a point that we probably need to shift into to be responsible. And it's not just that January 6th was on the ballot, but election denying and the fidelity to our principles of having an election. 60% of America's voting on a candidate that actually denied the election. And some of them are in Florida. And so that is something that we have to consider. When you're talking about DeSantis versus Trump and whether they can come together, who would it advantage to allow those people to be elected, and what will Florida say about that? And does Florida want to be a part of that wave of denying the fidelity to the principles of our elections?
To Jim's point, there are Trump supporters that they'll never. I just know from interviewing folks and talking to, whether it's with a camera or without a camera, and I'm sure that others as well have had conversations, that there is absolutely nothing that you can do to sway them from being a supporter of former President Donald Trump. And that, of course, that is their right. You can follow whoever you want to follow. But January 6th, in the minds of many, has disqualified him in the way that he is not in their opinions, not a plausible candidate come 2024. And that, of course, in the minds of some, paves the way for Governor DeSantis to be everything that Trump is and isn't all at the same time because of the...
He's not dynamic as Trump, and it's just going to be what it is.
Governor Ron DeSantis, we're being told, has officially come out. Let's listen in live to Governor DeSantis. This is live on WFLA Now.
rioting and disorder. Florida was a refuge of sanity when the world went mad. We stood as a citadel of freedom for people across this country and indeed across the world. We faced attacks. We took the hits. We weathered the storms, but we stood our ground. We did not back down. We had the conviction to guide us, and we had the courage to lead. We made promises. We made promises to the people of Florida, and we have delivered on those promises. And so today, after 4 years, the people have delivered their verdict. Freedom is here to stay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Now, thanks to the overwhelming support of the people of Florida, we not only won election, we have rewritten the political map. Thank you for honoring us with a win for the ages. I want to thank all of our campaign staff, from campaign manager Janera Peck down. This was the best run campaign in the history of Florida politics. I want to thank all of our wonderful volunteers who worked so hard to get out the vote. Your support means the world to Casey and I. God bless you and thank you. Now, it's a lot easier to run a good campaign when you got a great record to run on. And I would not have been able to see the level of accomplishments that we saw unless I had outstanding personnel working in the executive office of the governor, as well as heading state agencies. These folks worked hard to implement our agenda. They believed in our agenda, and the results have been historic. Thank you for your support and work. Thank you to Miami-Dade County. Thank you to Palm Beach County. Now, we're still tallying the votes, but it's clearly apparent that this election, we will have garnered a significant number of votes from people who may not have voted for me 4 years ago. And I just want to let you know, I am honored to have earned your trust and your support over these 4 years. And most important of all, thank you to the greatest First Lady in all 50 states, for being a great wife, giving unwavering support, being a tremendous mother to our 3 young children, and serving as an example for women throughout this state, especially going through the battle of cancer. She is remarkable. Now, today, today is the culmination of the 2022 fall elections, but in reality, Americans have been voting for many years now. They've been voting with their feet, and the results of that behavior has been just as stark as our landslide victory today. States and cities governed by leftist politicians have seen crime skyrocket. They've seen their taxpayers abused. They've seen medical authoritarianism imposed. and they've seen American principles discarded. The woke agenda has caused millions of Americans to leave these jurisdictions for greener pastures. Now, this great exodus of Americans, for those folks, Florida, for so many of them, has served as the promised land. We have embraced freedom. We have maintained law and order. We have protected the rights of parents. We have respected our taxpayers, and we reject woke ideology. We fight the woke in the legislature. We fight the woke in the schools. We fight the woke in the corporations. We will never, ever surrender to the woke mob. Florida is where woke goes to die. People have come here because our policies work. Leadership matters. We refuse to use polls and put our finger in the wind. Leaders don't follow, they lead. We set out a vision, we executed on that vision, and we produced historic results. And the people of this state have responded in record fashion. Now, while our country flounders due to failed leadership in Washington, Florida is on the right track. I believe the survival of the American experiment requires a revival of true American principles. Florida has proved that it can be done. We offer a ray of hope that better days still lie ahead. I am proud of our achievements in this state. I am honored by your support, and I look forward to the road ahead. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race in this first term, and I have kept the faith. We've accomplished more than anybody thought possible 4 years ago, but we've got so much more to do, and I have only begun to fight. God bless you all. Thank you very much. Thank you for a historic landslide victory.
Governor Ron DeSantis declaring victory at the Tampa Convention Center. Of course, with his family, First Lady Casey DeSantis. There is Lieutenant Governor Jeanette Nunez. This is, again, live here on WFLA Now. You also see Florida Attorney General Ashley Moody there on the left side of your screen as we now, again, discuss the win for Governor Ron DeSantis and a lot of Republican victories of note tonight. As we welcome you back into the WFLA Now Stream Center alongside, again, State Senator Kelly Stargell. Kelly, let me just apologize. Earlier in the stream, I said former state senator.
Well,
I got a little ahead of myself, did I not?
By hours, maybe.
Hours. Well, of course, it goes without saying, but I'm sure thank you for spending part of your time with us tonight. And of course, on election night, to be able to tap into your expertise, Jim, your expertise. We still have a good amount to discuss here, but again, just wanted to thank you both for spending your election night with us. Tara Newsom as well from St. Pete College. Let's pick things back up with what we were just discussing as far as the implications now with tonight's results and going forward. And I want to just pick things back up to what we were talking about, because where we left things was there has been this weird sort of animosity that has formed between Governor Ron DeSantis and former President Donald Trump, both here, of course, in Florida residents, of course. And we were talking a short time ago, Kelly, about how it would be a meeting of the minds, that perhaps the two would come together to discuss things. Who approaches who, in your opinion? How does that exactly happen?
I think both of them will probably look to the people of the state of Florida. They'll probably look to how they're going forward, what they're promoting. As Jim knows, in running campaigns and me in running a week, a day, I mean, things change rapidly, quickly. One moment things are one way, and then a little bit later something else it changes. So there's a long time between, in political speak, a long time between now and 2024, I would say. And I think a lot is going to happen between those two individuals in that time period that I think will start shaping all this to be clear.
Kara, Jim, would you like to hop in?
I think it's important to point out that one of the things that happened tonight, and Senator Starkville can speak to this, is that the governor did something unprecedented. He basically said, I want to change the congressional map in Florida, and he made it a much more partisan map. And as a result of that, we are going to have 3 additional Republican members of Congress. We also are now becoming one of the largest congressional delegations in the country behind Texas. But I also do believe that the courts are going to throw out the map in the Tampa Bay area before the next election. And I think that Representative-elect Luna will be running in a different district. Representative Castor will have a different district because this map unconstitutionally, I think in the minds of a lot of people, connects Pinellas and Hillsborough through a bridge. And that was never intended in the state constitution. I think there is a similar issue in North Florida where Al Lawson lost his seat because of this new map. And there's a new seat in Orlando that also could be redrawn. So I think you're going to be looking at different congressional map and different races in 2 years.
Is there any historical precedence for overthrowing maps that have been already drawn? Of course there is. So most recently in Florida, can we point to, of course,
we just did it.
The federal judges, we overthrew 2. So Congressional District 13 was at the heart of both.
Tara, do you expect that to occur?
Well, the Fair Districts Act in the state of Florida and our Constitution codifies that you're supposed to follow the U.S. Constitution's Supreme Court's decision that in order to have a fair vote in your district, in order for each person to be counted fairly, I should say, that you have to have contiguous lines for your redistricting. You can't interfere with geographic borders. There's a number of elements that would force our districts to comply with that constitutional mandate, as well as our state constitutional mandate. And I think that if you look at those previous court cases, it does look like this could be overturned. But that doesn't change what's happening now. And tonight, we have to deal with the reality that we're Congressional District 13 is part of the movement and the U.S. Congress that's going to overturn the House of Representatives. And that's going to mean a lot of things to our president. It's going to mean a lot of things to the people of Florida and to the United States. And so, yes, eventually, maybe in 2024, that might be overturned. But right now, it's going to mean something in terms of policy.
With a purple state, Jim, there's this pendulum swift. You were noting it earlier about how things will swing back and forth with a purple state from red to blue, and sometimes it'll be red for a few more years than blue, or vice versa. As far as picking up the pieces after tonight and starting to look ahead, who is the leader of the Democratic Party here in the state of Florida? Who is the one to rally and say, this is where things went wrong. We have to establish a new identity and carry things forward and try to shift things back in our favor?
No, it's a good question because there's going to be a change. So I think, again, the Democratic office holders that are left standing tonight are really very strong leaders, or they would not have been reelected. Some of them were reelected by a lot. So I think Representative Soto becomes an important leader, and whether it's the Puerto Rican community or the I-4 corridor, Representative Castor is already a national leader on climate change issues, which is going to continue to be a major issue, not just for Democrats, but for Republicans and independents in the country. We're going to have to work together on that. Representative Wasserman Schultz, I think, is a key leader in South Florida. And I think ultimately the best type of support and power comes from the grassroots. And so I think it's people that won school board races tonight or city council races.
Names that we otherwise we don't know right now. We really don't know.
Yeah. And I think, again, we'll see what the Republican Party that owns Tallahassee does with the legislature. And if that creates some disenchantment, don't forget about the independents. I mean, they are one of the fastest growing groups in this state. They go back and forth between each parties. I'm guessing tonight they probably went with the Republican Party, particularly on the economy.
Yep. I mean, when you're looking here at a 19-point it's 90 percentage point difference. Yeah.
But I think the story tonight's going to be about turnout. I think you got to give Governor DeSantis credit that he ran a very well-oiled machine. He turned out voters. I agree with the senator. It was a compelling message about the economy. It's tough. Governing is hell. Joe Biden has not pulled the country out of the ditch yet from COVID and inflation and problems with energy, and he's got 2 more years to do that. But I think a lot of these voters are going to respond to the economy and to solutions. And the next thing up in Florida is property insurance. And that's what
big story that our own Masa Saidi has been covering hourly. I mean, we're not even talking. She lives and breathes property insurance and the crisis that has occurred here in the state of Florida and how things improve as we look here live at the DeSantis camp at the Tampa Convention Center. Really quickly, Jim, I'm coming back to you, but we have to get this in. Projection. While Governor DeSantis was speaking, we do have now the race officially called in U.S. House District 9. You mentioned Darren Soto. We can now put the check mark next to his name, 53% over Scotty Moore, a race that was a little bit closer than some people expected, but with 99% of precincts reporting, the race is now called. And Darren Soto, again, going back to our nation's capital and returning in representing District number 9. So no surprise here, other than perhaps the margin being a little bit, maybe slightly closer than, but we were talking about it earlier, District 9 incorporating portions of our area in the Tampa Bay area, Polk County in particular.
You know, JB, I have something to add to the conversation regarding what are the Democrats going to do now? And I slightly disagree from Jim's assessment that it's grassroots. I believe in grassroots politics and grassroots mobilization. But the big tent of the Democratic Party, it's partly what happened tonight was the inability to create a strong overall message. And some of that comes from the grassroots movements around the state having lots of different ideas and issues that they care about. And it's almost like we need to work in tandem if the Democratic Party is going to actually really participate in Florida and have grassroots meet the top of the ticket. And Val Demings, who, yes, she did not win. Yes, she spent more money than Rubio, but she performed very well. And I think that she could add some strength and structure to the Democratic Party in the state of Florida. And it will have to be a message that, what Senator said, it speaks to everybody in Florida, but also coordinates those many different colors in the rainbow of the Democratic Party. I mean, there's just, it's a lot of different people to coordinate, and it can't necessarily be done from the grassroots up. It has to be a combination of those efforts. And we need the Democratic Party to do that, whether you're Democrat or Republican. Democracy needs pluralism, the competition of ideas, and so it's healthy for the state to have that happen.
You know, it's also too interesting, Tara, is that you mentioned earlier how post-pandemic, or really during the pandemic, we have this influx of folks coming in from other states, from the Midwest, from the Northeast, people coming in. And it was, for some reason, when I talk to people about that, it's always widely assumed that it's an influx of blue, but it's not that crystal clear in any way, shape, or form. People just they just immediately assume, oh, it's all the New Yorkers coming into town. All the New Yorkers are coming to Florida. It's just an influx of blue. But it really isn't that, because so many people during the pandemic were fleeing, or if you want to use that strong of a word, or leaving states that were blue, because they wanted to get out of that blue state, and they were coming to a state, and they saw, of course, how Governor DeSantis was, how he was navigating through the pandemic. So Florida is an ever-changing state, but even more so perhaps the last couple of years, but how the dust settles when all of the influx finishes, people are still moving from other states and coming down our way.
They are, but it's interesting. We have the data from 2020, and the data from 2020 says that 1.2 million voters came to Florida. And what's interesting is 40% of those new voters are Republican. They registered as Republican. And a little over 20% registered as Democrats, and the rest were no party affiliate, independent. And so Democrats lost their strength in registering new voters in that demographic, whereas Republicans pretty much stayed the same. And so that independent voter, we've really got to watch what mobilized them. What mobilized them, because they were a part of tonight's decision in the state of Florida. And clearly the Republicans' message worked. And so if Democrats want to actually capture those independents, they're going to have to find a message that works.
I think part of the Florida things that happened tonight is just the representation of what it was meant to be way back when our founding fathers put together independent and states' rights. Our state came out strong with the pandemic and said, this is who we are, this is what Florida is, this is how we want to operate, and people said, I like that, I'm going there. I think you had a lot of people who may have said, I don't like that, and I'm leaving there. I think you're going to start seeing with the division of our country, you're probably going to see the blue states get bluer, the red states get redder, and unfortunately, I don't think long-term that's going to be beneficial as a nation, but I think that that's what you're seeing happening. The people who moved here from California, a couple of them I know, a doctor I met over in St. Pete said, I moved here because I could actually open and stay in practice. I started my practice in California. We got shut down during COVID. I lost my business. I looked around and said either stay here and not have a business or go somewhere else, and he and his family packed up and moved to Florida. So the people who have moved here for the policies that have been in place by this governor. And I think if you look at registration, the Democratic registration is going down. The Republican registration is going up, which is unusual. It doesn't usually go down. I'm looking back through the history to 1972. A couple times it's dipped. That's what's happening. So I think there's a little bit to be said of a get out the vote and all of that. But I think it's more of a change of the vote. I don't even think it's a redistricting issue by the margins of the governor. That's not a district redistricting issue. The state of Florida is just the policies and the message of what the governor has said and what the legislature was able to accomplish resonated to people. They moved here and they spoke in an election.
Bipartisan is the word that comes to mind after hearing Kelly, because nationally it's not going to have to really occur here in the state of Florida because Republicans controlling both chambers of the state legislature. We've got Governor DeSantis, who's pretty much calling the shots in Tallahassee for the Republican Party. But nationally across the country, bipartisanship is likely going to have to become a theme for the next couple of years to get anything accomplished and reaching across the aisle and working with respective parts of the other side of the aisle. But as we're hearing Kelly mention, Tara, that bluer states are becoming more blue, red states are becoming more red. Do you agree with that assessment? And do you believe that we're looking now at the balance of power? It's very likely now that the Republican Party is going to take control of the U.S. House. The Senate remains in the balance at the moment. But bipartisanship and working together over the next couple of years, is it realistic, if you agree with Kelly's assessment, that we're becoming more polarized of a nation, with more conservatives being more conservative than ever and more liberals being more liberal than ever before?
You know, if you think that the House being controlled by the Republican Party and having a Democratic president is going to increase bipartisanship, I don't know what Kool-Aid you're drinking, because I don't think that that's going to happen. But what I do think is the spirit of wanting that coming together and the spirit of coming towards solutions. But I can't get over what Jim said, because it resonated with me regarding January 6th. And depending on what kind of election deniers get elected nationwide, I think that's going to affect the ability of both sides coming together. These are, you know, to speak to the senator's point regarding what our framers and our founders wanted, you know, they wanted almost a public religion. They wanted us to have a civic duty. They wanted us to be secular. They wanted us to pursue a healthy civic life without disrespecting each other's faith or our personalities. And the national discussion about election denying, it gets into the mud in those ways. And it challenges not just the ability to be bipartisan, but what are the shared principles across this country? And can we ever get there to actually get anything really done? I don't understand how we can get ourselves together if we can't understand that violence in politics is wrong, and that using political rhetoric will sometimes spur that, and that we need to take responsibility for that. Whether you're Republican or Democrat, I think we can agree that, you know, violence has no place in a civilized society, and that integrity of our election process, unless there's evidence otherwise, we have to stand by the process.
It's the foundation of the
right.
entire process.
And I have to tell you, you know, I'm looking over here at my new friend Jim, and he's a Democrat, and he's not pulling out his hair and saying, "Oh, damn DeSantis." He's saying, "Okay, I honor that he won, and I honor that he his issues were provocative enough for independents and Democrats to cross over and vote for him." But what that looks like on a national level, we have yet to see tonight, and we won't see it tonight. We're going to go home, and it won't be till tomorrow, and the next day, and the next day.
Tara, it's my job to ask about the forecast for the future
I'm
of our country.
so sorry, but I do think that we have to be honest with one another and say, listen, if we don't really start where the senator is saying we should start from the Constitution and the principles, and have some fidelity to them, we're totally lost. And recognizing what's happened over the last 4 years and what's responsible for them. And some of it is the rhetoric. And so what I came into my classrooms today and said is, hey, believe in the process, believe in the system, make sure you get out and vote. And then tomorrow, go over to your neighbor and shake their hand and say, hey, I'm glad to see you. We're gonna roll up our sleeves and get to work and hope that that spirit translates into the national agenda as well as the state agenda. That's what we're supposed to do.
And I know folks, I know folks on various, in various neighborhoods who live next door to somebody that doesn't agree with their political ideology and their political affiliation, and they still get along just fine. They're still going to their, respective barbecues, and their kids hang out with one another. But is there going to be a reflection of that in Washington?
Well, reflection in Washington, number one, and number two, in the state of Florida. I had students that were worried about voting, and whatever the reason, maybe the change in our early election, maybe the new election fraud unit that arrested individuals, these students were afraid to vote. And so what the story behind the story tonight is, yeah, there was a tsunami coming out for Republican candidates, and that's a wonderful win, but there were people that didn't feel like they could participate in the process, and that is not okay. And that's in part because of the rhetoric that's been going around nationwide.
I hate to say that I disagree with the afraid to vote. There's so many opportunities. You can have a mail-in ballot that no one even knows unless they are a student to go on and look up that information to know whether you voted or not. So I don't think there's much of an afraid to vote situation there. I think, unfortunately, social media has not been a benefit to any of us, and it just highlights the separation, and I think it highlights the fight between the two. I mean, many of you know me and some of the policies I've run. I mean, I've probably run some of the most right of the right policies that you can run in Tallahassee. You can disagree without being disagreeable. You can come together when you can come together. Majority of the things that are done in Tallahassee and the majority of things that are done in Washington are done bipartisan and people working together. It's just that, the fight sells, or whatever that's what sells the newspapers, is the discourse. That's what sells, that's what's intriguing online. And unfortunately, we have a society that is back to that instant gratification. You want to have instant response and get on and say what you want, and anyone can tweet anything from wherever, or put anything on Facebook from wherever. And I don't think that's been beneficial for public discourse. It's not been beneficial. And when I talk to kids, I speak to them all the time. I say, now that you've raised the issue of whatever the issue is by your protest and your fight or your sit-in, okay, now you've raised awareness. Now let's figure out solutions. That's the next step. You can't just keep doing awareness. So I hope that I agree with you. I hope that what we've seen tonight, people don't take and run with, oh no, this is a referendum of we can continue to be obnoxious or we can be rude but we do need to have people come together. I think what you're seeing is the silent people are saying this is our vote. The independents are saying this is hopefully it's to the policies that are happening, and not to the extremes.
Jim, I'm going to give you a chance to respond here for just one second. I just want to remind our audience on Facebook Live and YouTube Live, we are about to start animating your comments. We have not forgot about you. We're coming back in just a moment. Jim,
so I think the key word here is solution, that the sender mentioned. And the reason the Democrats are had a rough night in Florida, and by the way, it's far from clear that's true in the rest of the country. There's a lot of Democrats, including in the Georgia Senate race, who are doing pretty good, but it's still early. But the reason that President Biden and the Democrats took it tonight was the feeling of the public that they don't have solutions to deal with the inflation and deal with the economy. And it's a fair expectation. You predict the outcome of the election when you predict the question the voters ask. And that's the question the voters asked tonight. They chose that over reproductive rights. They chose that over threats to our democracy. And you have to respect that decision. But let's go back to Florida. This governor's idea of solutions, let's talk about the voting issue for a second, was to create a police force under the governor to do what? And to
make sure we had election security.
To arrest people as a publicity stunt who were simply trying to vote and at a minimum were confused. And they were put in jail. So this governor has done things that have been very divisive. And the job of a governor is to unite people after the election, whether it's to tackle property insurance, and I think the senator would probably agree, if property insurance was easy, we would have fixed it a long time ago. It is a tough issue. And the same thing's true with public education. He talked about exodus in his speech. You know, one of the biggest exodus in Florida is public school teachers. You talk to deans at colleges of education, University of Florida, they're encouraging their students to leave the state. So we need a governor who's focused on solutions and not dividing us. It is very easy to divide us. Donald Trump has demonstrated that. And that's what leadership's about, whether you're the president or the governor. And it's time for this governor to show some leadership. He needs to start working on property insurance, not going around campaigning around the rest of the country.
So that campaign sort of behavior that you're alluding to, Jim, as far as some of what you have just mentioned, now that Governor DeSantis has secured a 4-year term, do you expect that type of behavior? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you're basically pointing to this antagonistic behavior. Do you anticipate it increasing and getting worse, or do you believe that Governor DeSantis now is going to try to be more of a unifier now that he has secured a 4-year term in office? I know that it might sound like a question, but this is a question that people. Jim?
One of the reasons I got into politics is I'm an incurable optimist. So you got to hope for the best, right? And people do respond to expectations. So you got to hope that since he's now our governor, he's my governor, even though I didn't vote for him, that he's going to focus on property insurance. I think he's done the right thing on Hurricane Ian, working in partnership with the federal government.
Because there was, and I'd love to hear Kelly's perspective on this, Tara, you as well, because there was a lot of commotion when the Martha's Vineyard trip was arranged, that we have the property insurance crisis that, of course, is causing tremendous hardship for people, for families in Florida. And that Governor DeSantis, there was criticism that he was focused more on immigration when in reality there was a crisis staring at him in the face. And while I think Governor DeSantis would point to the fact that he was actively working on the property insurance crisis, including with folks just like Kelly Stargell in Tallahassee, there was a point to whether or not that was too much leaning towards campaign behavior and not solution-centric behavior. Kelly?
No, we tried to handle property insurance during the legislative session. Senate had a product that we put out that I think would have solved a lot of the situation. The House didn't take it up. They didn't do it. So, and I know you'd said earlier a lot about the governor's, power. That's one example in the legislature where he doesn't have absolute power. He wanted to get something accomplished. The Senate wanted to get something accomplished. The House was someone who didn't get it done on their side. So he had an agenda that we all bought into from the House and the Senate, and a lot of those things got accomplished. But there were a lot of things, as it was just said, property insurance is not easy solved. It just really isn't. It's where you squeeze that balloon and it's going to come out another area. You stop that, it comes out. We've done everything from sinkholes. We had windshield issues and we had roof issues. You fix one problem and it's whack-a-mole. Another one pops up. So insurance is a bear to handle. If everybody did the right thing, it'd be solved. Unfortunately, you've got homeowners who take advantage. You've got insurance who take advantage. You've got, lawyers who will take advantage. And any one of those sections at a different times makes it a hard nut to crack to solve. So, but I think, he's going to do a special session and try to take another crack at it with a new legislature and see what they can come up with.
Tara, I'd like to come back to you on this. There has been criticism of, and look, Governor DeSantis, while in the state that, of course, he leads everywhere that he virtually goes in these various press stops, various press conferences, he is received with just rounds of applause and people who are holding signs and bringing their babies. He's an extremely popular governor, but he has been criticized for even doing things such as going to other states and participating in political events in states outside of Florida. As far as what Governor DeSantis does over the next couple of years, he mentioned in his, I was listening very, very closely and intently to his speech that he just gave, his victory speech, declaring victory here at the Tampa Convention Center. And he mentioned repeatedly, Florida, Florida, Florida. There was no mention whatsoever. Of course, he's not going to mention any hints whatsoever at his intentions and what he might be thinking about as far as 2024. But do you see any, if we're reading tea leaves here for a moment, is there any optimism out there, I'll use the word that Jim used, that he is going to be more of a unifier as a Florida governor? Or is he going to continue the behavior that some people have called into question for being too nationally campaign focused?
Well, look at what launched him to this historic win tonight. He had very specific policies that created the breadcrumb trail to here, okay? And so there's nothing that indicates that he's going to get off that path going forward, either as a governor or as a presidential candidate. So if you're asking, hey, is he going to pivot and go back to the early days of his original campaigning when he seemed like a moderate? I don't know what I don't know what evidence you could look to say that.
If you're Governor DeSantis, you're looking at, and let's bring it up here again on your screen. Let's look at these numbers. You're looking at this, and you're saying, I'm winning.
I'm not just winning, I'm winning big, and it's resonating not just with Florida, but there's a reason why he was asked to be a fundraising surrogate around the country. There's a reason why he was, a favorite at a rally for other candidates. He has this desire, even if it's unspoken, to be part of the national Republican leadership, even if it's as a governor or a would-be candidate. And he's using this great popularity to help other Republicans. And there's no reason, based off of tonight's election results, that he would pivot from the socially conservative policies that seem to resonate with the voters that came out to vote for him.
So DeSantis is going to be DeSantis, the DeSantis that we have.
I think you need to watch for Donald Trump coming out on November 15th. And then we can really see what DeSantis is going to do.
So the governor is consistent, okay? And I think the question is what Governor DeSantis does when Donald Trump announces for president on Monday. And whether he decides to actively compete against Donald Trump, and then we got another campaign starting immediately because Donald Trump will go after him. He's already going after him in the last couple of days pretty brutally. He's implying he's got lots of things he's going to do. How Governor DeSantis deals with that and governs the state of Florida is beyond me. I don't think it's possible. So I think that's the fundamental personal choice he's got to make, because oftentimes the best politics is doing your job well. And if he will serve the state, deal with property insurance, he now has, I think, a supermajority in the legislature. I agree with the senator. These are tough problems, but this is why you get elected. And if you don't come up with a solution, just as President Biden learned tonight, the voters are going to throw you out. So he's got to make a fundamental choice about what his priorities are. But Donald Trump is starting the campaign for president a week, this coming Monday, in less than a week, and the governor's going to have to make a choice.
Has that choice been already made?
I think, again, I'll go back to what I said a few minutes ago. I think we're going to have a lot happen in a long time. I don't doubt that President Trump may come out and try to announce. I think he's going to see what he's a businessman. He's watched these things. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens, and a lot can happen between now and 2024. I think Donald Trump tried to attack DeSantis this weekend a little bit with the name calling, and it didn't go well for him. A lot of people pushed back on that. So I don't know that you'll see him maybe doing that again, because it didn't work the way he had expected. And I think that he then came out, I think, the next day and endorsed DeSantis and tried to bring that back in. So we'll see what happens in the long term, but I don't think the decision has been made. I don't think I don't think it's a done deal that DeSantis runs, and I don't think it's a done deal that it's a Trump-DeSantis fight at the end of the day.
The key about who we select as governor, and the senator certainly has her own experience, is what the agenda is going to be. The agenda in this state has largely been attacking people for who they are or what they believe. Reasonable people will disagree on these issues always. Some people think the government should solve them. Some people solve them in their prayers or in their families or at home. But the choice is going to be, what's the agenda for the state of Florida? What's the agenda the governor said? Are we going to deal with property insurance? Are we going to improve with our schools? Are we going to try people moving together? We have a lot of people that have legally immigrated here who feel excluded from what's happening right now. You have people of different sexual orientation. And so the governor has an opportunity to bring us together. It's not just Democrats and Republicans, it's independents, it's everybody. But that's going to be the fundamental responsibility of this governor. And he's got an opportunity with the legislature that's going to go along with him. But he gets to set the agenda.
There's one other piece to this that's interesting, is if we were looking for evidence that there was going to be this great unifier, you would then look at the, let's say, the Florida college system, or you would look at the university system, or you would look at the school board races, and you wouldn't necessarily see the kind of dabbling that the governor is doing. It's a great strategy. It's placing people that follow his beliefs and the Republican Party's beliefs into these really grassroots places that have really large systemic reaches. I mean, community college, there's 28 colleges in the state of Florida. They have huge service areas and they reach a lot of people on a grassroots level. And so if you take boards and you put your political orientation on them, it can have a great reach. And so I guess what I'm saying is, if you were looking for evidence of this great unifier, then maybe those dabbling in those areas that have such a reach all across the state wouldn't have happened. You would have seen more moderate voices on those boards. And at St. Pete College, we have a great board, so I don't want to say anything about it. I love them all dearly. They do a great job. But, you know, across the whole state, we see really more partisan individuals being selected for boards and to serve the state, and that at times doesn't look like evidence of the great unifier that you're looking for.
Like I said, I feel like I'm going to debate here with on this panel, but no, I don't think that there is a partisan nature to it. It is what the people believe in versus what they don't. And I don't want, some of these issues that were out there, they weren't issues of hate, and that they would like to be couched that way, that they were issues of hate. They were not. Trying to say that boys play sports against boys and girls play sports against girls is not hate. It's just, it's how you want to message it. And that's what I was saying is what you've seen in this election is there is that discussion that is, I think, an average person, majority of people, these things have been polled, 80% believe parents should be the ones making the decisions with regards to their children, not schools. If you poll some of these things of, do you think teachers should be the ones given an influence to the kids on regarding their gender and their identity, polls 80% of that's not your discussion. When you start talking about some of these things that have happened, immigration, we need to close our borders. But the thing that we did in the state of Florida was the economy. I mean, it's all about the economy. We have $22 billion in savings in this state. With that, we gave raises to everybody in the state of Florida up to $15 an hour, years before it was expected. We gave more money to our universities, to our colleges. We did incredible work for adoption and foster and all the services, incredible work for people with disabilities. We did all of those things. A lot of it's not even discussed. Everyone wants to highlight the areas that we weren't as effective, like insurance. But we don't talk about all of the areas that we were effective. I mean, you have to think Florida is bigger than New York, and our budget is less than half of the budget of New York. It's the economy. Is the economy stupid?
The economy stupid. That's
yeah,
right.
I mean, I hate to use all past presidential slogans, the silent majority, but it's the economy stupid.
It is.
And Florida's economy is doing great, and it worked, and what we're doing here has worked, and people want to be here, live here, moving here, and now they're voting here, and you're seeing it.
Any responses before we go on? A couple of brief, because this is okay. So let me explain how this is going to work. We are about to wrap up all of our key races, and before we do, we've had some very interesting conversation tonight with, again, Florida State Senator Kelly Startle, St. Petersburg College political science professor Tara Newsom, and of course, former gubernatorial candidate Jim Davis, who's joining us, all three of them joining us here live and having a very spirited conversation, but we want to bring you into this conversation. So I'm going to start looking for those of you who have been with us here on stream before. You know how this works. You can use #KJB to get my attention, and we're going to start animating your comments on screen. We're going to be wrapping up the top of the hour at 10 o'clock Eastern time. So we have about a 10-minute window for you at home, wherever you're watching from, to either you could agree with a point that Senator Startle made, or you can agree with a point that Tara made, or disagree, or ask a question for our panelists. I just want to give everyone the opportunity to have their voice heard. We are, of course, here live on your local election headquarters. But before we do, as we wait for people to start typing in their comments on whatever device that they are watching on, let's go through some of the projections for some of the races that we did not include in our broadcast, but this will wrap up all the projections of the races that we have been monitoring, and it's a lot of red. Folks, of course, we've got this race coming up on your screen. Florida Attorney General, yes, Ashley Moody will be back as Florida's AG with a 20-point win over Aramis Ayala. You can see there the results on your screen with 94% precincts reporting. this race has been called. We'll go over to really quickly the CFO race. Chief Financial Officer Jimmy Patronis, the incumbent, is back with a decisive victory, nearly another 20 percentage points over Democratic challenger Adam Hattersley. And in the Agriculture Commissioner race, Wilton Simpson will be the Republican in the Ag office, replacing, of course, longtime Ag Commissioner Nikki Fried, a Democrat who was serving across the state, the only Democrat in statewide office. And that wraps up all the projections for the key races that we have been monitoring here on WFLA Now. And we'll go to one of our moderators that is just reminding our commenters this is the last opportunity that you have to have your comment featured on stream. Thank you to our moderators for keeping our comment section clean tonight. Yes, we have moderators in our comment section that volunteer, that help to parse through some of the comments to make sure that we have a very clean, respectful comment section. But that's, they're social media. You were talking about social media earlier, Kelly. And while there is a lot of bad out there, there's also good. And we appreciate our YouTube moderators for doing a fantastic job of deleting and getting rid of comments that are obviously trolling comments or comments that are just extraordinarily hateful or disrespectful, of course, to the fact that we are trying to bring you election coverage tonight, and we have been over the last several hours. So we'll keep an eye here on the comment section. An opportunity for any of the three of you, any final points to make before we wrap up our live stream. Anything that you would like to share, anything that we haven't brought up on this live stream. Jim, I know that you're always thinking about some things that we should be talking about, where the conversation goes from here.
We haven't talked a lot about Washington, so I think it's worth pointing out that the agenda that will be set by the Republican House is going to depend upon the extent to which Republicans like Representative-elect Luna go to Washington. And I think there's a gentleman, the senator knows his name, we talked about it in Orlando. So the question is going to be whether they're going to push the agenda to things like, we're not going to fund Ukraine anymore, or we're not going to fund the federal government. We'll shut down the federal government until we get what we want. I think it's too soon to say how much of that element is into the Republican caucus. But I think that's a factor tonight, and I think Florida has sent Representative Luna up, and that's her views. I mean, she campaigned on that, and people voted for her on that. In the Senate, it's still unclear what the results were. Nationally, no one expected Senator Rubio to lose, but many of us thought Val Demings was a wonderful candidate. She's a wonderful human being, and hopefully will be back. The races to watch now are in Georgia, where Herschel Walker is barely behind Senator Warnock. Senator Hassan in New Hampshire was expected to have a close race. She has won comfortably. Senator Bennett in Colorado thought he might have a close race. He has won comfortably. So while Florida is basically done, the rest of the country hangs in balance, and particularly the United States Senate.
Let's get to some of the comments that are coming in. We have this one from Cassandra. It says, #AJB Florida, we have set a new record. Congratulations. And I don't know exactly which record Cassandra is referring to. Is this a record-setting performance, Tara, do you believe, for the Republican Party tonight, as far as it being as red as it was?
I think it's historic, and it's worthy of diving deep into the understanding of who voted for whom. And
historical context here.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we've never had the kind of year that we've had. We've never had a January 6th insurrection. We've never had the kind of climate change issues that we've dealt with. We've never had the kind of post-pandemic economy that we've had to recover from. We haven't had the kind of influx in Florida. We've always had Floridians, Florida growing from people coming in and out, but not to the rate that we've had in the last 2 years. And so, yes, it's historic. And it's going to be very interesting to see the kind of story the data tells to get us ready for 2024.
Looking here for some other comments. Let's go to FJ. And I'd like to, again, we're spotlighting our commenters. FJ wants this comment addressed, #KJB. As a legal immigrant, I feel like I'm completely invisible to the Democratic Party. Do you see this changing anytime soon? And why do you think other immigrants aren't more outspoken about this? This is an interesting comment, and who would like to chime in for FJ? He's saying that he feels he's completely invisible to the Democratic Party.
Well, I think Was it AJ? Sorry, I think
FJ.
FJ, send us more details on that.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell what he means by that, but I think
because no one should feel invisible,
and I think,
regardless of.
And it also suggests
affiliation.
he may not have voted, or almost didn't vote. The fact he's watching us still talk is a sign he's interested. But I think that's one of the stories tonight is people that didn't show up to vote because they didn't think this election was about them. It is hard for us to talk about this and just not get caught up in the us versus them, the D versus R, Trump versus DeSantis. If I'm a regular person out there, it's like, well, where am I in this conversation? And so I think that's one of the places where the Democrats came up short tonight, particularly in Florida. They didn't feel like voters were talking to them.
Sparking enthusiasm, just overall, and getting the voter turnout.
And you vote with your feet. And I think, again, you got to hand it to Governor DeSantis and his machine tonight. They voted with their feet. But I think what's equally true is the Democrats suffered as far as turnout.
I think a lot of it too is that the Democratic Party has focused a lot, and there's this whole border discussion, border open, border closed, and it's dominated the conversation. But I have a daughter-in-law who just went through the legal immigration process from Venezuela. It was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. It would have been easier and cheaper for our family to have flown her to Mexico and walked her across with a coyote. That should never be the case. But that whole discussion of how do we fix the legal immigration system so that it's not so cumbersome for our opening arms that we want to have people from across the world come to our country. We are a welcoming country to all over the place. We need to start having that discussion of how do we fix the legal immigration system to where it's not so cumbersome, but instead we're just consumed by illegal immigration. And I think that's what you saw down in Miami with Cuba, with the Cuban refugees and different people who've come here through the years who are here legally. Saw that fight, knew what they went through legally to get here, and then to see the embracing of illegal immigrants, but yet the person who went through that process and is here legally, I could see how he felt like he's not just by the Democratic Party. I wouldn't put it on the Democrats. I think as an issue, it's not discussed by both parties.
I think the senator makes a very important point about immigration. There's plenty of blame to go around, but I think it's also fair to say tonight that the Democrats paid the price for a broken immigration system. It was a carefully executed campaign message, and it worked. But here's the problem. I mean, I served in Congress with President Bush, 43. He tried to bring people together to deal with immigration. Mel Martinez, former United States Senator, Republican, was a leader in that. Look at where Donald Trump is on immigration. He never misses an opportunity to vilify somebody that doesn't look like him. It's terrible. You can't have a respectful, honest, balanced debate with that sort of tone. When the leader sets that tone, that's the problem. And as long as his shadow hangs over the Republican Party, it's going to be very difficult to have a respectful, honest debate about immigration. And again, I give Jeb Bush credit. I think he was another example of a principled conservative who said, we got to come together and try to solve this problem. But tonight, the Democrats bore the blame for that.
Alejandro with this comment in our comment section, #AJB. Why do you think there was a big shift in Hispanics to the right in this election? And let me just make this clear. While the numbers will have to be properly dissected and analyzed before we can come to any grand conclusion, but I all see you shaking your heads. Who would like to go first with Alejandro's question?
I mean, I think we kind of answered it in the last question a lot. I think that there's people who are here who've gone through that legal immigration process, or people who identify with what's going on with friends and family who've gone through that process are very frustrated by the conversation being dominated by illegal immigration. But I believe all of us want to fix it. I don't think that's necessarily 100% partisan, other than we have different approaches.
I think that in Florida, the Latino vote, Hispanic vote, is not, like I said earlier, monolithic. It's not the same in South Florida as it is in Tampa Bay or in Orlando or any other places. So they're not one voice. So when you're seeing that shift, I think you have to be careful. Is that shift just in South Florida, or is that shift everywhere? We have to sparse the numbers for that. But when I hear a lot of our Latino students talking about voting and the issues that compel them, it's not just the arduous process of immigration itself, it's also the fear of how the country might be moving in a direction, and they've been really micro-marketed to through campaign materials, and socialism is a worry to them. And if they are getting campaign materials that say, hey, the Democratic Party is a socialist party, and they don't want that, that may compel them to move right. And I think that has been very effective. And we saw that it was effective actually in the 2020 election down in the Miami area. So I'm curious to see if that was at play in this election as well.
So if we have time, I want to add 2 points. Sure. And we are heavily generalizing about the Hispanic community, but here goes. The law and order issue is a very powerful issue. And I think you got to give the Republican message team credit tonight that they heavily played the law and order card. I would say statistically, crime has not increased significantly, but if you watch TV, you would have thought the world was coming to an end, that people were knocking on your back door. That is an important issue in the Hispanic community. These are wonderful folks that they're very pro-family. They're very focused on law and order and following the rules where it's immigration. And this defund the police mantra was a problem, and it's still a problem. It's why Senator Rubio spent millions of dollars. And by the way, we haven't talked about the outside money in that race. There was a lot of outside money on that particular issue, and why, ironically, a former chief of police had to spend so much time defending herself on that issue. The other issue is the economy, particularly when you have first and second generation United States citizens that are living the American dream and hoping for the American dream. When the economy sags, when the promise of opportunity is broken, they're upset, understandably. And I think tonight that cut against the Democrats. And I think in 2 years, if the economy is improved, it will be a different situation. If it hasn't improved, whoever bears the burden for that will suffer as the Democrats did tonight.
I think I need a button. It's the economy, stupid, right? I just need that. I need that. I have a lot of buttons here. I could queue up that audio file and we could just play it over and over again. Let me just really quickly check to see if there's any final comments that have come in our comment section. I'm not seeing any others. I would like to thank all three of you for joining us today here on WFLA Now, as we're here live in the Stream Center. All three of our panelists here on the right side of your screen, they all took time out of their election night. They could have been at home with a glass of wine, watching whatever network you would like. I would hope it's WFLA as far as your local station. And we really appreciate their time. Kelly Stargel, you are a senator for another 2 hours. Is that correct?
I guess that's how that works.
Any outgoing words after serving a long and distinguished career in Tallahassee? You just cannot let you escape here without having the opportunity to talk about what it has been like for you serving as a state senator and serving in the state legislature for how many years? 10 plus years?
I was 10 years in the Senate, 4 years in the House, so 14 years total. And it's been an opportunity of a lifetime. I really enjoyed the opportunity to be up there, the policies and things that came before us. I'm more of a policy wonk, not as political. So to be here was kind of when talking, I'm like, I don't get into all the politics. I just look at the policies and the things that resonate with the people who just want to. Honestly, Rubio's speech would be something that I would mimic in the future, just because that's kind of what it is. That people, average people, just want to live, raise their family, have a good, good living, great schools, being able to, have the freedoms that they would like to enjoy. All of those things are important. And I hope this next legislature looks like they're going to have the supermajority. It's going to take a lot of personal responsibility on the part of all of these policy makers to do what's the right thing and not get because the politics can get you wrapped around the axle. And quite honestly, most people will tell you, do you like politics? Everybody will tell you no. Resonates all over the place. You talk to kids, and I'm like, just because you don't want to be involved in government doesn't mean government will not be involved with you. So you need to figure that animal out. And even if you hate politics, you got to figure it out. So I'm looking forward to seeing the future of this state. Tonight, for me, obviously, being a strong Republican is encouraging. I think it says that the messages, and not just the messages, the policies, the things we got accomplished, it was going in the right direction because the people agreed. They voted with it as a majority. And I think that makes me encouraged for our state. I'm a sixth-generation Floridian, so I'm even more proud to live here than I ever was before.
Well, we appreciate you being here and providing some of your expertise. Jim, I have to thank you for being here a third time. This is your third time into the Stream Center providing us with analysis. And let me remind folks, I have referenced, of course, that Jim has ran for governor, but his career is long and distinguished as well, as far as serving in Congress, as far as being you were a majority leader in the Florida House as well. We're talking about somebody who understands Florida politics inside and out. So, Jim, your expertise tonight and in previous instances in the Stream Center have been invaluable. So thank you as well. We appreciate your time.
No, it's great to be with y'all. Great to be with Senator Stargell and the remaining 2 hours of her tenure as a state senator.
Yeah. And Tara, we'll just really quickly point out we appreciate your time here as well. I want just really quickly to something that Kelly pointed out. I hope that there are some young people, just maybe, out there watching right now. As far as
in my house, they are.
Yeah, are they? Good. I would hope that some of your students are watching right now.
And they are. They've been actually texting me as they're watching, so that's been really
You should get their questions up.
Yeah, I should.
It's so important, and we only hope that there is just more interest in politics when it comes to the youth in Florida. And I just want to give you the opportunity to say any parting words as well.
Well, we're making inroads with the youth vote in Florida, and that's been really exciting this last election. But I'm excited to see what Florida will look like in the next couple of years, and we want to preserve academic freedom in this state so that we can have educated and prepared citizens to vote in the next election.
Really appreciate your time,
Thank
Tara. Folks, the very latest, all your election results, there was no way that we could cover them all. There's hundreds of them as far as local races on WFLA.com, and we highlighted about, I believe, 14 or 15 races tonight that, of course, are the key races. But there are so many other races that we were unable to spotlight tonight that are deserving of the spotlight. We are, of course, going to publish all your results on WFLA.com. Our entire team in the newsroom in that direction, they are currently working on making sure. We even have volunteers in to make sure that we are working with the local election offices across the Tampa Bay area and getting those results and making sure that they are published accurately on WFLA.com. So you can click on the link in the description on this video for the very latest from your local election headquarters. One last time, a thank you to Kelly, to Tara, to Jim, to Libby Dean as well. Hannah Brandt joined us earlier, Jeff Patterson, our entire WFLA team. This has been Battleground Florida's coverage of Election Night 2022. And again, this is from your local election headquarters, WFLA.com, the WFLA app. Thank you so much for joining us, and have an excellent night. We'll see you soon, folks. Take care.
Thank you for watching your local election headquarters. 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 Thank you for watching your local election headquarters.